Let's go.
Arnold to explore the manor and find the schematics for
Manor.
it.
It is a manor. That's a fabric.
And if people get
Fabric,
hurt along
no.
the way, so
How do you say it in English?
Price worth paying so that she can get what she wants.
I don't
Just
know.
like we see Helpy do to Cassie in Ruin,
So cute.
leading her to an almost certain demise just to shut down Mexes and free M2. So that's it. We finally solved the story of Security Breach and Ruin. It's all about M1 Fiona trying to reconnect with M2, the robot David, and fix him so they can be a family again.
So cute.
I wish it
Yeah,
were
that would be
simple, friends.
cute.
But this is FNAF. There are, of course, complications with all of that. While we are being shown very
I don't know
clear
if I'm a
motivations
furry
for M1
anymore.
back in
No, false. It's
1979,
okay if you're a furry.
that's
What's the
strictly going to be
problem?
the case.
Furries are cute.
It'd be very easy for us to go, oh, M1 is Fiona,
And if
M2
you
is David,
don't identify
end of
as
story.
one anymore,
But
it's
not
okay.
like old-fashioned FNAF where these endoskeletons
Just
are
be
possessed by
yourself,
the spirits of the original
you know?
person. They are programs designed to learn and imitate those people. We're shown this with M2 throughout the game. It started as a copy of M1's program.
Yeah, that actually is called a manor, even though it's
learns to be violent, not because
factory.
David
Yeah,
was violent,
factory.
but because
That's
Edwin
the
was
thing.
violent towards it. Then in Ruin, we see M2 mimicking Gregory's voice. Again, a new stimulus changing how it behaves. M1 is no different. There is a note that can be
Because
found in
I'm
the basement of Ryan's
F
costume
waving
manor
my
where
button,
you
it
have
makes
to
me
avoid
feel
the
weird.
moon and collect the
Oh,
final
bro,
collectible. It reads
I
as
guess
follows.
there's like
We
these
were expecting there
mechanical
were
tails that you don't
complications.
need
Consciousness
to
was lost
wave
for
in your
undetermined
butt.
time. Once I woke,
But
we
I
were
don't
all
know
together
how
and
expensive
happy
those
family.
are.
But something was
Some of them
different. I
are
felt
automatic, so don't
was I
worry.
corrupted file suspected. This
Okay,
moment
I
being
don't think
mentioned
you
to
need-
complications, the loss of consciousness. We've heard about it before. Or should I say
Sorry, I don't
read
think you
about
need
it.
to
This is
wave your
Fiona's
butt
story.
if you
It's
find
not the one from
the
Secret
right
Hitler,
tail
but
for you.
hails from the Pizzaplex. In it, Fiona gets pregnant, but there are complications
I
and she
guess
dies.
I'm not
during
much
childbirth. The only
like
difference here is that the right
I
side
know
wakes up
there's
and
some
suddenly
types of tails out
The
there.
similarities to Fiona,
You know?
along with the corrupted file, makes it sound like this is coming from
There's
M1
even ears
Fiona's
that move
perspective. She
themselves,
remembers
you know?
dying in childbirth, but then suddenly is awake and part of a happy
I'm kind of
family
happy
like
too
the Fiona
right now.
family.
Yay, no, false, I'm so
Memories
happy
are
for you.
Conflated and confused based on other stimuli. How she's being infected with memories from
You know,
the books is a theory
streaming
for
makes
another
me
day.
happy
The point
too, you
is that
know.
M1 is also
I'm
susceptible to
lately
memory
so
corruption
depressed and sad
personality
and
changes based on
horrible.
new stimuli.
Streaming
Especially,
just
it would
helps
seem
me
if
to
they
get
share a
better, and it's
connection.
amazing.
Which brings
Thank
us
you
to
so
the
much
glitch
for being
trap in
here.
all of this. It's pretty well accepted at this point that Glitch Trap has actually been
Bro,
the
one
mimic
thing, don't you
program
think
this
that
whole
Glitch
time,
Trap
infecting
design looks
Fazbear's
like
systems
a
and
rat?
mimicking whatever it needed to
Looks
help
like a
you
rat, look at
VIP,
that
the glam
nose,
rocks,
but
and
I'm
acting
also
like
sad
a
that you're
virus,
sick.
infecting
Ah,
them
no, I
all
don't
with
think
the
I'm really
control.
sick, it's just
If
stuff in
M1
my
was
nose. Oh my god,
purely
cute tiny
Fiona,
face,
it
thank
wouldn't
you.
make sense for M1 to present herself as anything other than
I am
Fiona
sad
in
for
some
other
kind of
stuff
digitized
too.
form. Probably a foxy
You know?
like we talked about earlier. But instead
yeah.
we see an old school version of Afton's Yellow Bunny.
But
Why?
don't worry,
Because
don't worry, be
M1
happy
has
please,
also
don't worry
been
too
receiving
much.
other stimuli thanks to its inclusion in the creation of the Help Wanted VR game, as I alluded to earlier.
Told us to scan it. It was just junk, circuit boards and things like that.
By having M1 circuitry used to build Help Wanted, the M1 program was fed information from the first set of games in this franchise, learning all about the Yellow Bunny killer that would lead kids
Bro,
into
I
the
don't
back room
know
and
why,
kill
but I'm
them.
thinking it's
family
a
of
rat
children all
now.
killed by animatronics, and a father that wanted to put them back together. A father with the same goal as her. Someone willing to crack a few eggs.
Bro, I
to
think
make
this is
an omelette.
it
They're
is so
practically the
confusing
same
anyway, I don't
person,
understand
and so
anymore this
M1
thing.
accidentally makes them the same person, wearing the costume, kidnapping the kids we see in the newspaper in Security Breach's bad ending, and leading them into the back rooms during VIP. All of this explains why Security Breach's story felt like such a mess, and it's why no theorist could really have predicted what we ended up seeing in Secret of the Mimic. Most of the theories I had were
Are there
about
even more
Afton
games of
and
FNAF
Amy's
coming
part of
out?
the story, because
Jesus
all signs
Christ.
left
Yeah,
by
there's
Glitch
one
Trap
5
or
laps
the
with
Pizzaplex
Freddy,
in
yeah.
general were pointing towards Afton and his involvement with the Mimic. How else were
I
we
think that's
supposed
the
to
only one,
interpret a
right?
dining
Or
table
there's
scene
more.
with 5 characters clearly representing the Afton family in a room with post-it notes written in binary? But this is why Fiona, M1, was conflating her stories with that of the Aftons. Take a second look at that dining table scene. The magician we assumed was Afton, it's wearing a bow tie, something which, of course, matches Afton's famous Yellow Rabbit costume, but I mentioned in our last theory that within Secret of the Mimic, bow ties are really commonly associated with another character.
Okay.
Edwin. We pick one up off of his statue during Moon.exe. He's
Imagine
wearing
they're
it during his company
twins.
portrait, his wedding
And then
photo,
it's true
and his
they're
family
twins.
photo, and it's literally the logo of his company. Plus, Edwin was kind of a magician when you think about it, specifically when it came to technology. He developed things well beyond what should have been possible
that's so
for
cute.
the
Look
time,
at
so
that.
much so that Fazbear hired him to work on their stuff and eventually bought the whole thing. And then there's the motherly character, the one at the head of the table, the one that we all naturally assumed must be Mrs. Afton, despite the fact she's never shown up in the games. Well, in the game files, that character model is called the Nanny Bot, which is what M1 was originally supposed to be.
Think of it as your new babysitter.
And now M1 is in charge. Edwin wasn't going to fix things, it's up to her, and she has control of the entire Peterplex.
Oh my god, that's
is
some
now the
power
one
then.
at the head of the table. This dining table now has characters that, yes, fit the Aftons, but the parents also bear a striking resemblance to her own family that she's trying to rebuild. And that drive to rebuild the family is still there. I already mentioned that Helpy's whole thing is trying to get Cassie down into the basement to stop Mexes and free M2, but which family she's now trying to rebuild is obviously getting a little lost in the source. That's why we
Maybe
have two
the
glitch
both
drug
of them was
disciples,
the
Vanessa
problem.
and Gregory, both of whom we've pointed out since the very beginning, share a lot of similarities to the Afton children. And that's not even going into the similarities between David Afton and David Murray. Again, theories for another day. What we're seeing is M1 getting confused, mixing up storylines from her book persona and her newly found Afton persona, conflating the two ideas as one in the same. She's trying to rebuild the family she lost all
You know,
the way
this
back
art
in the
style is quite
1970s.
cute,
But
that
thanks to
one.
her use
But
by
then
Fazbear
there's another
Entertainment
art
to
style
make
they
a
do in
VR
the
game,
portrait,
she's
it's
taken
so
on too much of
creepy for
Afton's
me.
persona, and so is still driven
Like
to
those
get
cheeks,
M2 out
why
of the
are they
basement,
so
and who she
big?
believes M2 now personifies is completely messed up. Does she still think it's her son David? Does she think it's the other kid from the Afton lineup that's missing, Michael? Or does she not even really know anymore? Is she just trying to free it because
Poor
that
guy,
core
my
desire
God.
is there, but the meaning has gotten lost through all of this new stimuli? The truth is, that part is unclear right now. Any and all options are available to us. We just need to keep digging while also being aware that the DLC or sequel could drop in a year or so and change everything again. But speaking of digging a little deeper, regardless of who M1 thinks M2 is anymore, I do think we've been given the answer on how to stop both of them once and for all. It's just gonna have to wait until next time. All I'll say for now is that it has
Manzanita
everything
will
to
be
do with
picky.
one of the
What
most
do you
tricky and
mean,
mysterious
picky?
animatronics from all of
Two?
Security Breach. And I'll also say that's just a theory. A game theory!
Wait,
Thanks for
with
watching.
food
World premiere
or...
on Game Theory. The Legend of the Deltarune is...
Like with food.
Sun and Moon are the key to
I
solving
mean, one
the
time I
myth.
was,
We
but
always knew
then
that these strange characters
when
were
there's
in
no
some
more
way
food to
connected
eat,
to
you
our
eat
latest big
everything.
bang. But thanks to
So
Secret
yeah,
of
I
the
learned
Mimic,
to
we
eat
finally
everything
know
because
why.
sometimes I
And
don't
it
have
tells
food.
us everything we need to know to end it all.
But I was picky, yeah. But I'm not anymore.
Hello, Internet. Welcome to
If
Game
there's
Theory,
few
the
food,
show
I have to
that's
eat
looking for
what
lore
there
all
is,
day
so-
and night. And I've been deep on the lore hunt, friends, thanks to the release of Secret of the Mimic. In the last episode, we focused heavily on the past and present.
But yeah, no,
of
I thought
the
I was
Mimic,
picky
or Mimics,
way many
M1
years ago.
and M2. M2 being the physical
I am still
animatronic that
picky,
we
it's so
fight
cute.
in the game, a copy of M1's
It's
programming
okay to be
gone wrong
picky,
that
I
ends
understand.
up
Not
locked away
every
underneath
food is
Murray's
good.
costume manor, and eventually the Peterplex all those
Bro,
years
if
later.
I
Thanks
if
to
I had the
inclusion
option
of
to be
the scoop
picky, I
and
would
costumes
be.
from MCM, the spare parts we
But
find lying around the
I
facility,
don't
and,
have that
the fact
option
he's still
anymore,
doing the
so
whole attack humans
I
thing
eat
because
whatever
of what
appears in
everything
my...
Not him. You're not.
Like in my house, I have to see what kind I eat and stuff.
M1, on the other hand, is a program that during the game is primarily.
But don't worry, I'm okay.
Fiona, Edwin's deceased
You know, these
wife,
portraits
trying
are
to
so
fix
weird, I don't know
M2 in order
why.
that she can get her son,
But this style
David,
is
back.
cuter.
She convinces Edwin to build something called the Cradle, a
The
large
Cradle.
computer that Mixes spawns from during Ruin. The problem is, as time's gone on, M1 gets removed from the Cradle and is used by Fazbear to create a VR game.
I took out the fruit of the
Being
metal
taught
package.
all
What is
about
what's another
escapades and therefore
package?
beginning to mimic his actions.
I'm sorry for asking this.
Now M1 is confused, still trying to bring back her
Vegetables, I
family,
mean.
but
I
who
took
her
vegetables
family
to
is
noodle.
has become
Okay,
a
what's
mix
another
of her
package,
own
Annie?
family, like the
I'm
magician
sorry, I don't
Manny,
know.
representing her and Edwin, with the children of the Afton family that we saw in the original run of games. But what we didn't get to talk about last time was the future of the Mimic and its connection to a character that we have been theorizing about for years: Sun and Moon.
So
When he
cute.
first showed up in Security Breach, we knew nothing about this guy or what his purpose in the whole story was. By the time Ruin came along, it felt like he had to be connected to the Mimic, with both of them sharing the same individually moving
Yeah, I
teeth, and the
guess.
fact that he wears a Jester costume, which felt very connected to both the Jester costume we learned about in the books, as well as the whole Fall Fest carnival. But now we have Secret of the Mimic, and Sun and
Lately,
Moon
there's so
are
many
all
clown
over
stuff
this
in
thing.
horror games. It's weird. Oh
We've
my
got
god,
OG
Jesus
versions of the
Christ.
characters, we've got
is
some
that? That's a
mini games,
huge
we've
head.
even
What
got
the-
a mysterious lullaby.
Okay, I
all
guess.
of which make one thing extremely clear. We were 100% right about Sun and Moon being connected to the Mimic. Throughout the game, we are being shown that these two, or three, or I suppose four characters are
Oh my god,
intrinsically
therefore,
connected in
I just
so
don't listen
many
so you can see.
interesting
Okay, I
ways,
will
but
see
most
it after the
importantly, Sun
stream.
and
Don't
Moon is
worry. Thank
actually
you,
the
Nightfalls.
key to not just solving the Mimic, but ending it once and for all. I hope you've knocked over all your stackable toys, friends, because it's finally time to clean up the mess that is Sun and Moon. But before we get started, quick reminder. On
You know,
August
Sun is so
16th
cute,
at 2
but
p.m.
Moon, I think
Eastern,
it's
I'm going to be
creepy.
hosting our FNAF Secret of the Mimic live talkback, and I'm going to be joined by the wonderful John FNAF, Right Toast, Heidi's Fantasy,
Toast.
Hyperdroid, and Dorco. We're going to be talking all things Secret of the Mimic and even taking some questions from you guys. So make sure you're subscribed and tune in to be a part of it. You won't want to miss it. Remember, that's
Okay.
August 16th, 2 p.m. Eastern, right here
I
on
guess
Game
it's
Theory.
like
But now, back to the
in
video.
3-4
The first
months, I
instance
guess.
we get of Sun or Moon
Or maybe
appearing in
it
this
is
game
already
right as
passed.
we enter Murray's costume manor for the first time. As we head over to the computer in the security office, we can find a few
Helper.
options to select.
Okay.
Maps, obviously a map of the facility.
This
Logs,
reminds
which is
me
where we
of
get
the
to see
maps
all
on
the
Fallout
juicy
4,
war-filled
Fallout 4 and
catalogs
Fallout
that were
3,
found from the
because they're
mailboxes strewn about the
green,
building.
but
And
you have
then
to
there's our
discover
main
it. It
focus
doesn't
for
appear
today,
like that.
Moon.exe. We talked about Moon.exe in our previous episodes, but in case you missed those or the massive playthrough we did over on GT Live, it's basically a game within a game. We start in a
Ooh.
bedroom, and while the goal is initially unclear, if you take a wrong turn, you face the wrath of Sleepy Moon, who tells you to go back to bed. Now, as you play the normal game, you can find collectibles inside of presents that you can
Ooh, a
then
hat.
load into the system, and they will appear inside Moon.exe
Ooh,
for you to
slay.
use. Each one serves a specific purpose, either helping you to thwart Moon's attempts to stop you, or giving us information about Edwin and his family. In a previous episode, we've talked about the snowboard
that's
that is next to
clever,
a
I
married
guess.
man and woman, where the woman looks burnt, and how it's meant to
Oh.
be symbolic of Edwin and Fiona Murray. But that isn't the only
Hello,
lore
shiny
this game
Pikachu,
provides
how
us.
are
The
you?
initial premise of us being told to go back to bed gives you the impression that we're a child, trying to sneak out of our bedroom and go on an adventure. As we go through this adventure, we encounter
Look
a
at-
baby
oh.
owl that we can save that then sticks with us throughout the journey,
So
cooing and
cute.
rubbing up against us like a pet. However, things
So
take a
cute,
weird
I love that.
turn
How
when
much
we
left?
encounter the old woman that lives in a cabin in the woods.
7
This old woman has
videos.
a head covered in spikes, kinda like you'd expect a sun to be represented. After
Bro, looks
fulfilling
like
her
some
tasks and
Didi or
fixing her
something.
broken
Oh my
masks, she
god.
then hands you a final
For me, it's a
mask,
Didi
mask
or
of a baby
like a
owl.
ghost.
At the same time, our baby owl friend seems to have gone missing, but the oven is now on, and there's a suspicious smell of chicken.
No!
With our new mask equipped, this sun woman takes us to a cave that
Mean,
is
so
guarded
mean.
only for
7,
Moon to
yes.
see the baby owl mask and to run away crying. This was the moment that things clicked for me. At first, I figured we were playing as David, with Moon being an obvious analog for his father Edwin. That's why we got
Jesus Christ.
explicit
Wait, did I
messages
put
like,
like
"Go
on
back
this?"
to bed, I'm too busy." Things that
Yes.
Edwin would actively say to both David and his wife Fiona.
Just give me a minute. David's 2 years old. He won't remember a thing. Besides, he's got plenty more birthdays.
However, this
What?
moment where Moon, Edwin, sees us wearing a baby owl mask and then runs away crying, along with us only gaining the
Bro,
owl
that's
mask
so
as the
creepy.
baby owl disappeared, it made me realize we weren't playing as David, but the mimic, M2. M2 was designed to mimic David perfectly, like it was
Okay.
wearing a mask pretending to be him. And we know that actually really upset Edwin.
Oh, bro, poor M2, we didn't know that.
Sounding like him.
This game, therefore,
Bro, he's just doing the job you made him to do.
Learning how to be David, being taught how to behave, like being in David's bedroom and being told to go back to bed. The baby owl, therefore, the one that we get the mask from, that disappears and dies, is the actual David. And the old woman's son, the one guiding us through the game that directs us on our journey once we have the owl mask, well, the game is pretty clear about who that is. Once you execute
Who is that then? Tell me,
head down to the
please.
R&D department, we find
Why did they
the
kill the
original
owl?
mimic, now taking
so
on the
mean.
persona of Fiona, sitting there like we spoke about last time. And on the monitor surrounding her, we see the same sun character. M1 Fiona is
Bro, she doesn't
Sun.
look like the
That
sun.
actually explains how M2 learned
She
to
looks
be
like some
David
creepy
in the first
figure or
place.
something.
When M1 and Edwin are arguing about whether to make M2, David is already gone.
It happened,
Aw.
and you have to deal with it. You did it before.
So how did M2 learn to copy something that wasn't around to be copied? Well, if you saw our
Well,
last
I don't
episode,
know.
you'll know that M2 is actually a copy of M1's program, and M1 was around while David was
Yes,
alive. We
yeah,
even
that
see a
makes
photo of them
sense.
sitting on a hill together. So Sun, the one who is controlling and guiding this game for M2, is able to use her memory of David to help inform
Okay, it's
M2.
M1, so
This
M1 is
does
me
bring
because
up an
it killed
interesting
the
detail,
owl,
though.
okay.
M1 gives M2 the owl mask, and suddenly Baby Owl is gone, being cooked on Sun's stove. We also know that M1
Why,
was
bro?
the one that Edwin asked
Don't
to
you
go
tell me
down
that
their
M1 killed the guy.
playground.
Fiona, go get him. I left him out at the playground.
This would seem to imply that David's death may not have been an accident.
Don't you tell me
after
that he
all,
was
M1
killed.
actually killed David in order that she could have a real
Bro, no
family,
way,
a
that's so-
robot
that's so-
family,
oh
just
my.
like her. We spoke last time about how she's getting confused between different iterations of Fiona, one from the books and one from the games, thanks to this
Oh
note
my
we
God,
found in
no
the
way,
basement of
she
MCM.
killed the baby.
It's
Oh,
possible that
Jesus
she
Christ.
figured out she wasn't the real Fiona, and so wanted her own family, rather than just an inherited
Bro, then
one
she-
where
you
didn't
destroyed
really
another's
belong.
family?
But I'm
Oh
aware
my
this
God.
part's a little bit more speculative. It just occurred to me while I was writing this. Anyway, the point is that Moon.exe is showing us that Moon equals
Oh my God,
Edwin
now
and
I'm
Sun
sad, bro.
equals
The
Fiona.
kid was
M1's
killed.
version of Fiona. This finally explains why we see our modern Sun and Moon presented the way they are. By the time we get to Security Breach,
Oh my God,
Red
so
Trap,
big,
or
Jesus
M1,
Christ.
has control of the Pizzaplex. She is in control of the animatronics, which is why they turn on us in the first place. But when she gets control of Sun and Moon, we see that Sun is the caretaker.
So cute.
They are the one who wants things to be perfect and wants to win
That's so
the child's
lovely.
affections. They are also the one during Ruin who wants to be rebooted. Just like M1 Fiona.
Poor
wants
guy, my
M2
God,
to
what
be
happened?
fixed.
I
Moon,
didn't
on
play
the other
this, I'm
hand,
just seeing this. Oh my God, no, that's scary.
They want the child to just go to sleep and are far more aggressive, reflecting how M1 sees Edwin. She believes him to be aggressive both because of Moon.exe and, well, you know.
Stop sounding like him.
However, there
My
is
God,
one
Jesus,
more mention
I
of
hate
Sun and
Moon.
Moon that's
Don't you
inside
tell me I
Moon.exe
love
that
Sun, but
want
I
to
hate
mention
Moon.
because
Yeah,
on
Moon
the
looks so
surface,
creepy,
it is
Jesus
slightly
Christ.
confusing. What's not confusing, though, is having gourmet quality meals prepared
Ooh,
by
what the-
award-winning
what is
chefs
the-
delivered straight to your door thanks to today's sponsor,
Why changing
Community.
so-
As I'm sure
so
you can imagine,
rapidly?
trying to solve FNAF has meant a lot of long days and a lot of late nights. Scrubbing through footage
I
frame
like
by frame,
Moon
analyzing
Night-Falls.
every
So
pixel
cute,
to find the
Night-Falls.
answers, which means
You know,
I
I
haven't
don't
had a
know,
lot of
Moon
time to
looks
cook
so
for myself,
creepy
let alone
and
make a
mean.
restaurant
Sun
quality
looks
meal.
so
That is where
lovely, you
Community
know?
came in to save the day. With
Well, maybe I
hundreds of
will have
weekly
a
meals to
better
choose from and a
foundational,
bunch of dietary
foundated
options.
opinion when I
was
play
able
the
to pick
games.
dishes that suited my taste. Like if I wanted
For
to go
now,
low
the
sodium,
only
high
FNAF
protein,
games
keto,
we
or
have that
vegan,
you
they
can
have
vote when I
everything need
finish
to keep my big
the
brain
playthrough
working on the
is
important
FNAF
things.
World and FNAF Into the Pit.
That means
If it was
UM2.
legal, I would
It's
have
also
tossed him
made
in
with
the
in-season
oven.
and
What,
locally sourced
more?
produce when possible. Their meat is humanely raised
mean-
and free of antibiotics and hormones.
Okay,
and
I
it can be
guess-
even cheaper than buying your groceries from the
Like,
store.
but
And
is
that
there an
Moon thing
oven
was
to
great
put
for me
a
because
Moon
personally, I'm a
into?
big fan of anything with
But
steak
if
in
you
it. It's
kill
actually one of the
Moon,
few things Santi and I
you
can
kill
agree on.
Sun,
their
bro.
skirt
I don't
steak with
want to
herb
kill
mushroom
Sun.
by
Sun is
Tony Perez, and
cool,
their
bro.
flank
Sun
steak
is so
green ball by Chris
adorable.
Rattle are perfect
I
for
think,
filling
bro, I
that
never played the
meaty
games. I'm
hole in
just
my
getting an
life.
opinion based
But
on these
whatever your
videos,
food
you know.
preferences, Cook Unity is offering a special discount just for you. If you click the link in the description and use my code GAME50, theory, you'll get 50% off your first order of chef-made meals delivered fresh, never frozen, directly to your door. Thanks again to Cook Unity for sponsoring this video, but now let's get back into the confusing stuff going on inside moon.exe. Once
Or
we get
in
inside
all
the
of
cave that
FNAF,
Moon is
but okay.
guarding, we encounter a broken statue. We
Okay.
go through the various tunnels and one by one find pieces of the statue, putting it back
Jesus
together
Christ.
to create a moon-like figure. Suddenly, we're told that we have been reborn.
You rebuilt yourself, but now you are split in two.
Moon and sun, destruction, and life.
So, does this throw a hole in
Bro,
my
how
argument
Moon
here?
destroys
Sun and Moon
stuff.
are now being used to describe
Like, out of
M2,
character,
not
just in real
Edwin
life.
and M1.
I know
And
sun
at first,
gives
that
life, but
was
then
my
also they
concern.
can take
But as
it.
I thought about it more,
But
I
Moon is
realized
like
it's
just
not
the thing
about
that protects the
metaphor or
art of
symbolism.
meteorites and
They're
stuff.
actually feeding into
And also
one another. The
controls
rebuilding
the
of
waves
statue is
and
reminiscent
water
of
and
M2
cycles
rebuilding
and
itself
stuff.
after Edwin destroyed it.
You know, speaking of legs, what do you think? I just finished mine.
But then, why a moon statue? Something that specifically references Edwin. Well, because it's not the same moon. Edwin is represented by Sleepy Moon, a full
That's-
moon character.
that's so
but this
weird.
moon is a crescent moon. This is a new character. One that is
Don't you
similar
tell
to
me.
Sleepy Moon, even inspired
bro,
by
who
you could
designed
say,
that?
but it's entirely its own thing. And when we're finished, we are told that it
Went
is being reborn. M2 putting
forever!
itself
Thank
back
you so
together wasn't
much.
just fixing
Thank
itself,
you so
it was
much. I love that
now
sticker.
with a new input. Violence. Edwin's violence. Moon's violence. It was no longer just the M1 based program it was before. Edwin's actions affected M2 and caused
sorry.
it to be reborn as the violent animatronic we know now, like a
Oh.
new version of the character Moon. But it
Bro,
isn't
that's
just
so weird, that
We're
face,
told
oh
that
my
it is a
God.
combination of that destruction and the life of Sun. M1 wants to create life, making M2 their son, while Edwin wants to
Okay.
destroy M2.
Let me put the hat. Please wait. So cute, tiny face. Thank you, no false. Oh man, come on. Sorry. Okay, good. Sorry.
These two things have combined together to make the mess that is M2. And those pieces are now at war with each other. Again, just like Sun and Moon are in Security Breach. Duality in this franchise is something that I've wanted to write a theory about for a long time. It felt like there's been so much of it in the series. From the two-tone
Like,
logo on the Ruin
I think
website, to
M2 is
two-colored
innocent and
eyes of
M1 is
tiger
the bad
plushies,
guy.
Sun and Moon, to even as far
Like,
back
Sun is
as
the good
William
guy and Moon is the
versus
bad guy and
It's
stuff like
always
that.
been about these two
William is the bad
opposing
guy and the
sides
other
being
good.
mixed together into one thing, something that usually ends in a mess or tragedy. At the time,
Bro,
I just
yeah, I'm
didn't
tired
really
of
know
tragedies.
where it was
Please
going
stop.
in order
Thank
to
you.
write the theory on it. But now I understand. This is what it was trying to tell us. Visual clues to tell us the story of Edwin and M1 Fiona without actually spelling it out. It's also why Sun and Moon's moving teeth are the same as the mimics. They may not literally be the same. Sun and Moon may not actually be a mimic, but it's visual storytelling, giving us a physical clue to their connection. We were just
Maybe.
missing the key detail of Edwin and M1 even existing in this continuity to be able to tie it all together. Although I'm sure the lore reason for the teeth thing is once again just the mimic rebuilding itself with spare parts. We'll see. But Sun and
Maybe.
Moon isn't done teaching us about the mimic just yet, because in Ruin, we get to see that these opposing sides can turn from a mess into something new. We see Sun struggling to keep control while Moon is acting dangerous, again, like we've been seeing with M2, the original program unable to keep control, with
Save
the violence taking
Sun,
over
please,
and
thank
attacking
you.
people. But after Cassie is able to plug in the data diver, Phas Wrench, they reboot and Eclipse is born. They are calm, fun, friendly, protective, exactly as they were supposed to be. We fixed them. But did you notice the
Wait,
key
really?
detail? Eclipse isn't Sun now fully in control, nor is Moon completely gone. It's both both halves mixed together in order to create something new. Sure, Sun was trying to help us and was the good side of both of them,
So
but we're
cute,
being shown that
Nargles.
you actually need both sides in perfect balance in order to make things work. And this
So
idea
cute,
is
adorable.
reflected in Secret of the
See,
Mimic
if you-
too.
if
When
we
down in
kill
the basement,
Moon,
we
there's no
encounter Sleepy
eclipse.
Moon in the flesh or cloth or
Oh my god,
whatever it
that's
is.
so creepy!
And one of the telltale
That's so
signs he's
weird.
close by is you can hear him singing.
Oh, he's near. He's near. He's near.
It can be hard to make out the exact
Bro,
lyrics
that's
he's
so
singing while
creepy
you're
and
trying
weird.
desperately
I
not to lose all
can't
your
stop
progress,
saying
but
that.
the melody should definitely ring a bell. It's actually the most popular lullaby of all time, simply called Wagenlei, or lullaby in English. You may have also heard it known as Brahms' lullaby, named after its composer, Johannes
heard these
Brahms. And it
names.
goes a little something like this. Lullaby and good
I just say la 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 la.
Roses, bed eyes, with lilies overspread, his baby's wee bed. Lay thee down now and rest, may thy slumber be blessed. Lay thee down now and rest, may thy slumber
I just say
be
la la la, la la la.
Thank you, thank
La,
you. Now,
la,
you
la,
could say that the use of this song was just
I just say that. I didn't even know there were lyrics to that.
Obvious one. But where has that ever been the game theory way? You see, this song wasn't written to be sung on its own. It was designed as a mother and father duet.
Really?
While the mother would sing the lullaby, alongside it, the father would sing an old German folk song called Sis Anders,
What?
which is a song that the original mother actually used to sing to Brahms when they were together. This
Wait,
would then
what?
work as a counter melody underneath the primary melody of the lullaby. Counter melodies are super interesting because rather than
Well,
a
what is
harmony
this?
which works in lockstep
That's
with the melody,
interesting.
the counter melody is literally a second different melody that plays at the same time. If you try this with just any two songs, you're going to have a lot of clashes and mess, and it's just not going to work. But when done right, these two parts that don't feel like they should go together suddenly begin to almost dance. They bounce off one another, creating something
So
totally
slay.
new. It's not working
You know,
together
this is
in
interesting.
harmony, but they do work together, despite appearing diametrically opposed.
DNA,
But right
true,
now,
no
with
false.
Mimic as is, it clearly
Music
is
DNA.
a mess. These
DNA
two forces
music
are working
slay.
against each other, not as a counter melody, but as clashing melodies. So if Eclipse and the lullaby are showing us we need to bring these pieces into alignment, how do we do that? Well,
Yeah.
I think the answer lies in the secret ending of Secret of the Mimic. In order to get M2 to calm down enough that we can insert new programming into it, we have to play a bedtime story for it. The bedtime story itself changes each time, but what doesn't change is the people telling the story. The pre-recorded tapes that we find throughout the Murray household to get here include Edwin's voice and Fiona's voice, both of them working together
Okay.
to tell a story, telling M2
So
that
cute.
violence doesn't solve anything in order to bring balance to M2. The lullaby also hints at this because it actually has one more name that I neglected to mention. It's sometimes
Okay.
known as the Cradle Song or Cradle Lullaby, just like Cradle.exe, which we spoke about last time, is Mexes, a program designed to soothe M2, keep it under control, but required M1 and Edwin to work together to implement. M1
Okay.
wants to restore M2. Edwin wants to destroy all versions
Bro,
of the Mimic.
poor
These two
robot, he
things
doesn't have a
shouldn't work together.
guilty
They
created
feel like
them.
conflicting
Oh my god.
views. But when these characters come into alignment with one another, the song begins to form. M1 cannot restore M2 on her own. Sure, she may have the glitched code, but Edwin's voice was crucial for the plan working. We need to bring M1 and Edwin back together in order to truly stop whatever M2 has become, and to put both M1 and M2 to rest finally. But you may have noticed a problem with that solution. As far as we can tell, Edwin is dead.
Yeah. It's a recording then.
There is damage to my office interior, as well as a small fire.
M2, respond, please. I can't move.
You can't feel my legs.
M2 blew up part of the house.
Bro,
and
you
used to
you
help
hate your
Edwin
robot and
while
you
it burned
expect your
traps
robot
around
to
him.
help
But
you,
remember
Jesus
what
Christ.
franchise we're talking about here, friends. Just because someone is dead doesn't mean they're truly gone. In fact, Moon basically tells us as such with the lullabies he's singing. Oh yeah, this thing still has a
Bro, that
lot
thing
to
is
give
so
in
weird.
terms of lore significance, and it's to do with the more meta side of it. Why it was written and who it was written for. Brahms wrote this lullaby for his close friend Bertha Faber. Brahms and Faber used to date many years before, which is when she used to sing Sis Arndish to him, a song about a shepherd and his lover. When they reconnected years later, she was married to someone else, had a child with another on the way. Brahms wrote this lullaby for the birth of that second child, but it wasn't a completely selfless, sweet act. He wrote it so that when she and her husband sang it together to their baby, he would also be there. It was a way of making sure he was connected to her always, even when he wasn't physically around. If Moon is supposed to represent Edwin, and he's the one singing this song, it makes me think that we're being told that while he may be physically gone, he's not completely gone. He's just somewhere hidden, somewhere we wouldn't expect. And that somewhere, I believe, is Princess Quest. Because
that guy means so many secrets. Princess Quest, I guess. Oh, no way.
Old man Consequences.
Oh, yeah, someone told me this last week.
In the comments about how I followed in Matt's footsteps and I've lost my mind to this franchise, hear me out. I'm not the only person to have had this idea. This idea was actually brought up during our recent live theory crafting session by fellow FNAF theorist Gibby's Horror Homestead.
Oh, I see that, Gibby Horror's Homestead. Edwin as Old Man Consequences. Hello, Gibby. Great for you to join us. This thought actually occurred to me today.
And not only had the thought occurred to me earlier that day, since then, I've not been able to get it out of my head. It just makes so much sense to me. I mean, Edwin is the ultimate man of consequence. His creation of crazy gadgets landed him in bed with Fazbear, who then took everything from him. His rushed inventions meant things could go wrong easily, so Fiona went to Full Fest to make sure that didn't happen, and she died. He didn't pay enough attention to his son, and so David ended up dead. He created an incredibly powerful AI and then beat it up, and so in return, it killed him. Everything Edwin did came back to bite him on the butt. Consequence?
Yeah, true.
Name is Edwin. Plus, in the Tales from the Pizzaplex story, The Storyteller, Edwin does come back 40 years later and tries to stop the Mimic. And Old Man Consequences in Security Breach is all about equipping the princess to defeat the glitch trap virus, aka the M1 program that's been corrupted by Afghan's influence and is now running the Pizzaplex. We also know that Game Edwin wants to stop the Mimic. Both Mimics.
I let a machine raise my kid. You're not real. What was I thinking?
He realized what he'd created and that it couldn't
getting
replace the
crazy
real thing, which is why he didn't want to fix M2. Instead, just going along with the plan to create mexes to pacify it. Now, I'm not saying that Edwin is possessing Princess Quest or anything like that. Modern FNAF requires modern solutions, and so I believe it's more likely that, like M1 isn't really Fiona, but the M1 program mimicking Fiona, that this is another program designed to imitate Edwin, like a digital signature of sorts. In the real world, programmers will sometimes physically put part of themselves into their code. They will leave a line of code or even just a few letters or symbols so that when someone else takes a look, they will know whose code it is. We actually see Gregory do this in GGY. When the animatronics begin behaving strangely, the characters take a look at the code and find the letters GGY all over the place. It's not really doing anything, it's just a digital signature to let you know that this was great.
I'm learning this now.
At this point, M1 has been integrated into basically every part of Fazbear Entertainment's technology. M1 is running the show, corrupting everything. But M1 was Edwin's code. He created it, and so I'm suggesting that deep in that programming lies a little piece of himself, almost like a failsafe that's there trying to fight back. Old Man Consequences. In FNAF World, he was buried deep in that code, but as time's gone on, he's slowly come more and more to the surface, able to help more and more. He helped Vanny fight back against the glitch trap virus. We even saw Moon, the character we've talked about representing Edwin, giving over
that's so big.
to Vanny so that she could crush it and be free of its influence at the end of Princess Quest 4. And I think in whatever sequel Steelwell has planned, we're going to have to help Old Man Consequences one
Bro, what, there's another game coming out?
M1 of glitch trap's influence and bring Edwin Edwin and M1 together to stop M2. They may be doing it for different reasons. Edwin may still want to destroy it. M1 may still want to fix it. But if we can get them to put aside their differences, those counter melodies are going to start to work together to create a complete piece that will end the internal battle of the Mimic once and for all. Although the Mimic in Ruin does seem to have a convenient hole where we had to insert the data diver during the secret ending, so we might have to figure out a different way to get these two fighting programs into it in the first place. But that's just a theory. A game theory! Thanks for watching. World premiere on Game Theory. Over the last year or so, I've been noticing an evolution happening within the indie horror. Everything we've known about FNAF was a lie.
Okay, I guess,
on the surface,
again,
it seems like our old favorites, William and Henry, didn't actually create anything, and instead just stole it all from newcomer Edwin Murray. But how much of that is really true? And
I don't know.
what if I told you, theorists? The answer is entirely up to you.
Okay, I guess.
Hello Internet, welcome to Game Theory, and welcome to our fourth and final episode in our Secret of the Mimic extravaganza. It has been a wild ride, loyal theorists. We've uncovered the truth about the Murray family timeline, we've solved the mystery of Mexes, and we've managed to figure out secrets of a previously suspected
I'm still
Mimic
sad that
son
the all
and
died.
moon. But the biggest question that I have yet to solve, and the main question I had going into this game, wasn't about the Mimic, or Edwin Murray, or Security Breach. I wanted to know the truth about the origins of Fazbear Entertainment. William
I guess.
and Henry. These two characters we've known about since the beginning, and yet know very little about. Where did they start? How did they create this empire? Who were
Monet, I guess. They use Monet and Pizza.
I mean
And
nothing
animatronics
could have
and
prepared me or the
arcades,
rest
I
of the
guess.
internet for what we were about to witness.
Spring lock assembly may be required.
Spring let
Are you kidding me?
Oh my god!
what?
Oh my
To be fair, that reaction
Spring
was
Lock what?
several hours into stream, where all
My
we
God.
witnessed so far was invention after invention that we thought had been a Fazbear invention for years now, only to discover that Edwin made it. Like the data diver, a device used to access
I don't
certain points around
understand.
Murray's costume.
What
Now,
was the
that
shock
looks
on that- on
an
that?
awful lot like the Faz wrench we use in Ruin. Or what about the massive list of characters? Happy Frog, Mr. Hippo, Orville, Monty, Roxy, Moon, Foxy, Chica, Music Man, Helpy, even the wet floorbots from Security Breach share
That's adorable.
similarities to the Cleanovac. They're all
So
here
cute.
in Murray's costume manor with designs, schematics, and costumes strewn around.
Yeah, that
the
Moon one
facility.
is
Edwin
weird.
and his wife Fiona designed them all. It felt like everything we'd known over the last decade had been a complete lie. It was never William and Henry. It had all been Edwin.
And then what they did
one
then,
at first,
William and Henry are
definitely
there
reads
for
that
what?
way.
I don't
There are
know.
clues
I don't
hiding in
understand.
voice memos, text logs, and just in the physical design
Bro,
themselves
that's so
that show
weird.
us the truth is a little more nuanced. So let's jump into our unfinished helpful carts, friends, because we've got to get to the bottom of this and figure out whether William and Henry invented anything or whether they are just complete.
Yeah, but yeah.
First
So
off,
then
there
why
is
they
one
exist?
important
And
thing
what's
we have
the
to clarify.
what's the
Did
thing with
William and
it?
Henry actually steal Edwin's inventions? And the short answer
Maybe.
is no. I've
Okay,
mentioned
no.
in a past few theories little tidbits of information about this, but while it was clear Fazbear had some shady business practices
Shady
and
business.
were actively stealing employees trying to obtain company secrets, which is not totally legal, they never actually stole Edwin's intellectual property. Edwin was a contractor, and so they would have contracted him to make stuff for them, like the demo of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza that we see in the R&D department.
Okay.
And that whole process would have included contracts that decided ownership, which we sadly never get to see. I can tell you, though, as a former contractor myself, typically those contracts favor the client, the person who came to you to be a contractor. When I would shoot or edit a video for someone, that would then go back to them and they would own the final product.
Oh.
I didn't own anything.
Oh, that's
but what
sad.
about Chica, who was made for Chica's Party World, not Fazbear? Or Roxy and Foxy, who were built for Edwin's TV show idea. Those were definitely Edwin's, and Fazbear surely had no rights to them. Well,
True.
until they did. One of the text logs you can obtain is from Willie A himself.
I know,
While
but
the
this is
message
sad.
cut off a bit at the start, the intention is very clear. Quote, software development and the entire MCM catalog. We would love to keep you on as a lead engineer. Although we now technically own the land, we would
Own the
never
land, oh
touch
my
the
God.
house your parents built. Afton was offering Edwin a position at Fazbear because he had just bought MCM. Its remaining employees,
what?
ground it's built on, and most importantly, its catalog of characters and inventions. Fazbear now owned everything. They never stole
Monopoly.
it from Edwin, they just
My
stole all
God.
his employees, drove the business into the ground, and then bought the rights so that they could claim it as their own. But let's be honest here, that's kind of a small nitpick in this whole thing. The real issue here is that we believed Henry and William were these great inventors. And yet
Yes.
it seems like they just kind of bought everything and didn't make any of it
True.
themselves.
Now
How could Henry
No, maybe
claim
William did the rabbit or thing.
if they weren't his making at all? So let's take a look and try to clear things up. Henry may not be the originator of most of the characters we've attributed to him over the years. R.I.P. Chica was Henry's first theory, but that doesn't mean he didn't invent any characters. From the minute you step into Murray's Costume Manor, you will find one item that appears everywhere in the facility. Pizza boxes from Fredbear's family diner. Now, while we are visiting MCM, the place has been abandoned for a bit, but what that means is that while the place was active, so was Fredbear's diner, which makes sense given Fazbear Entertainment was a thing and had the means to buy MCM in the first place. They need some way to make money. We also see Fredbear and Spring Bonnie on a number of posters throughout the place, identical to the ones we found.
I like his art style. Like those in the posters are cool. Yeah, those are that art style is cool.
For the characters of Fredbear's, we never see versions of Fredbear or Bonnie within the main facility, and that is because of this line.
Every one of my creations are available for purchase or lease.
For Edwin to be able to say that, he would have to own the rights to the characters. But the fact that Bonnie and Freddy are missing implies that those two characters were not created and owned by Edwin, but instead William and Henry. Edwin has posters on the walls because there's clearly a long-standing relationship between the two companies, and based on his audio log telling us that they should
just hire some teens to wear the suits like we always do.
It seems like he has worked on the diner in some way. So the posters are just him
You know, but
promoting
one
himself,
time
going,
someone
"Hey,
tried
you know,
and
this
died because it
successful
was a
franchise,
Springlock
well, I helped
suit,
with
right?
that." But he can't show any of
Maybe
the
not.
costumes or
I don't know.
electronics for Fredbear and Bonnie because he doesn't own the rights. They were created and owned by William and Henry. So, nice big tick for them there. But that leads us into the big discussion around Fazbear.
Springlock assembly may be required.
Springlock assembly, okay.
Are you kidding me?
Oh my god!
Henry didn't even invent the
What's happening?
Did Edwin invent the Springlox? Before this point, we've been under the impression that it was
Why
Henry
did they
who
freak
invented the
out? I don't
Springlox. As during the
understand.
Silver Eyes trilogy, we're pretty much told that outright. Quote, these are Springlocks, one of the first ones Henry made. But now in Secret of the Mimic, we see plenty of Springlock suits. We see messages about Edwin making them, and we even get to travel around inside them, which is kinda horrifying. However, there is one big detail that stands out pretty quickly, which made me reconsider whether this was another acquired contraption. The fact that we cannot be killed by the Springlocks. Springlock suits are notoriously finicky, causing fatal injury at the first
that's why
sign
I'm
of sudden
kind of weird
movement
that
or water. And yet,
people
we managed
will
to fall
enter the
through an
suits.
entire floor and yet sustain no injuries. It's almost as if they are not the same kind of Springlocks. And that is exactly the case. We receive a text log from Edwin during the game that specifically talks about updating the Springlocks to sustain water damage and be okay. There's also the fact that the original Springlocks were designed to be both suits and animatronic, while the new ones seem to only really be suits. And finally, the versions of Fredbear and Spring Bonnie down in the R&D department, while looking somewhat like the versions we know, have colored exoskeletons made of metal.
Edwin Springlocks are human safe. Slay. Then why did Henry did some Springlocks that are not safe?
That talks about
That's so weird.
for a long time before this moment.
It would be so much easier to keep using the spring locks.
The fact that there have been Springlocks used for Hen, while these new improved metal versions of the Springlocks for Fredbear and Spring Bonnie currently only exist down here in the facility, it tells us that there are other Springlocked versions of these characters in existence, felt-based ones that use the old water damage prone design.
Different people made them. Okay, makes
Edwin
sense.
made the new Springlocks, but Henry can still have made the originals, right?
I don't know.
I really wanted that to be true. Believe me, I did. But when Ash and I went back to find all the secrets on GT Live, we discovered this message on one of the Mrs. Helpfuls to Edwin from Fiona.
I'm worried about the new suit design.
Okay.
One of the costumers, Vic, nearly lost his hand today. All he did was spill a can of pop and the thing snapped shut like a bear trap.
Fiona is worried about
My
Edwin's
God.
springlock designs, and the one her team member was wearing does end up having an issue with water damage. It's almost like that text log we read earlier was a response to Fiona's request to check out the problems, because Edwin was involved in the creation of the original design.
Okay.
This isn't the only time Fiona is worried about Edwin rushing out designs that later
Okay,
cause
people are
problems
already
either.
getting
A lot
hurt.
of new ideas and new projects coming in. The staff can't keep up with all your changes. But I think you need to step back a little and focus on one project at a time.
This is a pattern of behavior for Edwin. He sprints through dozens of projects, moving on to the next one so fast that his previous invention isn't fully finished.
Yeah,
leading to
that's
a bunch
kinda
of
bad.
failures and returns like we see in the text logs. And so the idea that these springlock suits that were incredibly dangerous and faulty were also Edwin's creations actually makes a lot of sense for his character. And yes, there is a chance that the original springlocks were potentially a collaboration between both Henry and Edwin. But right now, I'm just not sure the evidence is there. The books say that Henry was
You
the
know, they
inventor of
look,
the springlocks,
they're
but
kind
that's a
of
very
really
different
apart on
continuity. The games
age,
have never made
like
that claim. The closest we
in
get is
history. How can I say this? Edwin sounds more recent than Edwin. Edwin looks really old, so I don't know if they could actually talk to each
Henry
other.
was the one who made them. Edwin did say that Henry was the one changing the designs.
I got the change order from Hen last night. Why
Ah,
change it
okay, then,
now?
sorry.
They changed their minds. Well, we're so close to final. New concepts are frankly creepy.
But he never mentioned springlocks. That doesn't make
Okay,
this
then,
it's
I
just
was
a
wrong, sorry.
realigning of our understanding between the different continuities of these characters, which is basically what Secret of the Mimic did with all of the book continuities. In the novel trilogy, Henry made the springlocks, but in the games, it was Edwin. Who knows? Maybe it'll turn out to be Afton in the movies. But thanks to the company
What is
failing and
this?
Edwin's eventual demise, the new springlocks for Fazbear's characters were never finished. Fazbear just had to keep using Edwin's old designs, so I guess you could say that it was karma that got Afton in the end, in more ways than one. And speaking of good old Willie A, what did he actually do? I mean, we've always known he's a bit of a scumbag, so I don't think his lack of inventions would be all that surprising. But just like I think we can still credit Henry with the creation of the normal animatronics, I think there are a couple of things Afton can be credited with creating himself. Namely,
Bonnie.
Funtime animatronics and the Scoop. In Sister Location and Pizzeria
The
Simulator, we
Scoop.
found blueprints for these devices, and they all have copyright attributed to Afton Robotics. Of course, we know that Foxy
Yeah.
isn't his OC, that one firmly belongs to Edwin and Fiona, and the whole stomach hatch design definitely borrows from Edwin's springlock designs. But the animatronic part, the weird wiry bodies, we don't see anything like that from Edwin. The Scoop also,
Yeah.
of course, bears resemblance to the springlock crane.
Yeah, why
we
did
found
they
in
make
MCM,
the
and that we
Scoop?
then saw in
I
Ruin.
still-
They have
I don't
the ability
remember
to scoop
anymore.
something out of a costume or springlock suit
Jesus.
or whatever. But all the stuff about remnant injection and storage, that's all Afton, baby. Which means at this point, we're pretty even. Edwin did make a lot of stuff that we thought were Henry and William, but that doesn't mean they were completely incompetent or unable
they're
to
getting
make stuff
crazy,
themselves.
lol.
However, there is one more thing that we need to discuss. One more invention that, if it was claimed by Afton, could affect
The Scoop was to
entire
gather remnant.
timeline
Ah,
as
okay,
we
thank
know
you,
it.
Shiny
see,
Pikachu.
everyone, and I mean everyone who played this game or watched someone else play it, have been very quick
That's
to
so
point
creepy,
out
by the way,
similarities
Jesus.
between David Murray and Afton's son, the Crying Child. The most obvious similarity is their name. Thanks to a
But-
friend of the channel, Hyperdroid, and
Yeah,
a handful of
didn't
other
they
theorists,
discover the
last year
Crying
we came
Child
to the
name? Why
conclusion
do you
that
keep
Crying
calling
Child's
it
real
Crying
name was
Child?
also
Yes, David.
David Afton. But there's so much more to it than just a name. Their bedrooms look almost identical,
Ooh,
and
look at
both
that.
of those bedrooms are in houses on top of a hill near a tree and near their father's work. They're both missing mother figures in their lives, with fathers who spend too much time working. One of the collectibles we get is David Murray's purple plastic telephone, the same one we see in David Afton's bedroom,
No
along with a bunch
way.
of other similar
tell you,
toys.
that's so
David
much
Afton is famously
coincidence.
scared of Foxy, having ripped off the head of the Foxy plushie, and his brother Michael bullying him wearing a Foxy mask. David Murray also is afraid of the pirate Fox, crying when Edwin uses one of the Foxy hand puppets on his first birthday.
My God.
Ahoy there!
Oh, honey, you're scaring
My
Both of
God,
them
poor
even have
baby.
a birthday party for them coming up on a Saturday, only for them to die on that same birthday. Everything about these
Depressing.
two feels identical to a strange degree, almost
Yes.
as if they're the same person. But
They're
obviously,
not the
as
same
I
person,
mentioned,
calm
David
down,
Murray
bro.
is dead, so they
Unless
cannot
they are like-
physically be the same person.
I don't
But
know.
who is still alive and kicking? The thing that was created to become David Murray. M2.
Wait, what?
And this is where we hit an interesting fork in the road. There are two ways we can look at this information.
What?
There's the more
Someone
literal approach
sucks.
where the reason these two characters feel so similar is because they are the same character. M2
Oh my
takes on
God,
the
thank
role
you
of
so
David.
much!
and
I was
Aston
not
adopts it as
expecting
his
this!
child.
Jesus
Or there's
Christ,
the
thank
less
you!
literal
Oh my
the
God,
idea
I'm
that
so
these
happy!
similarities are actually parallels designed to
Thank
point
you
us
so
in the
much.
direction of a different kind of Fazbear.
Oh my God, I'm so
That they
happy.
took more than Edwin's
Thank you.
creations. They claimed his entire story. And because
I was
this
not
is
expecting
the big
this.
finale, I wanted to do something special here. Secret of the Mimic has been all about getting us to re-evaluate our past.
Thank you so
theories,
much,
our past ways of thinking. It
Kalisa
showed us that
Chaos,
we
thank you
can't
so
hold on
much.
to theories
Oh my
too
God, I'm
tightly,
so
that we
happy.
need to be open-handed and explore all the possible options to us. And so, rather than stand here and try to convince you that one interpretation is right over the other, I wanted to present you with both options. Explore the repercussions and flaws of each of them so that you can come to your own conclusions. So, on the left is the ending where
Oh.
David Afton is...
Wait, what? Why? What is this? What are these two videos? Wait, why did I take out the sounds? Huh? What are these videos? William is actually innocent, William is a thief? But they're not in the playlist at all. Look, it's Milo. Continue watching. Okay.
He's trying to rewrite history. So, go ahead. Make your choice, theorists. I'll see you on the other...
Okay, let's do this one now.
FNAF's
We're almost
Secret of the
finishing
Mimic
this.
has finally solved security breach.
Oh wait,
Thanks
we
to the
already watched this one. Sorry.
Sun and Moon are the key to solving the Mimic. We always knew that
What am I doing? Wait.
Was I wrong about FNAF's Secret?
Bro, look at this. They're the same videos. Oh my God, no way. You're almost finishing. Look at that. They're the same videos. They put the same. No, I didn't forget. They're the same one. Look at here. These two are the same ones. That's why it's repeated. I put a like to know which ones I already saw. And then they actually put the same ones again.
Of the Mimic. I spent months going
Well,
over
guess
tiny
only
details,
3
analyzing
videos
everything frame
left.
by frame, trying to solve this fascinating game. But I wasn't.
Bro, I think
alone.
it's a confusing
There were two
game
other
and kinda
theorists
creepy,
who
but
brought their
okay.
own solutions to problems I raised. So, are they right? Was I wrong? Let's find out.
Game
Hello,
Theory.
Internet! Welcome to Game Theory, the show that knows solving the FNAF lore is a team sport. It's been a couple of months now since we finished our Secret of the Mimic extravaganza, where we left off on a, let's call it, divisive branching
Bro,
path.
they talk
I
so
did
much
my
of
best
the
to
Mimic,
present
but
a
I don't
couple
see
of
that
options as to
clown.
why we were seeing so many similarities between the characters of David Murray, David Afton, and Gregory, from their looks to their families, even the beats of their own stories. One option was that the M2 Mimic takes on the role of David Murray. Afton adopts him as his son, becoming David Afton, and then when he breaks M1, the AI that assumed the identity of David's mother Fiona, decides to put him back together, creating Gregbot. Or there was the option that the first 7 games in the franchise weren't just in-universe games, but completely fictional, taking elements of David Murray's story and transforming it into a narrative about the Fazbear founder and his family in order to remove the Murrays from the picture. Like I said, 2 very different paths, and not everyone likes them. Heck, I even pointed out their flaws in those
No, bro,
videos.
I don't
But
understand
wanted
these
to
series
show them
anymore,
as
but I'm just
options of
watching
how
it.
we could interpret the evidence. And since then, I've actually received a lot of comments asking me one very specific thing. Why wasn't I mentioning other people's theories? Especially when
What?
two of them were trying to answer the same question. Fate Fiona by Gibby's Horror Homestead and God David by T-Dreads. And the honest answer is, I hadn't watched them. I know that might be hard to believe. Us FNAF theorists usually want to take in as much FNAF content as possible, but as the amount of theorists has grown over the years, so has the rise in comments accusing theorists of stealing ideas from other people.
What,
So to make
bro,
sure
the guy
I
was-
wasn't in
See?
any way influenced
Ah,
by
okay,
their theories,
sorry.
even subconsciously, I purposely avoided watching any other FNAF theories while I was working on my own. It's a shame,
poor
really,
guy was
because at
accused
the
of
end the
stealing
day,
when he
solving
didn't
FNAF has
steal.
always been about collaboration. It's why Matt did his live talk back after FNAF 4, and it's why we still do them today. We need to work together if we have any hope of getting through it. So now that I've been out of my Secret of the Mimic hole for a few months, I figured it was high time I checked them both out to see whether they were able to fill in any of the gaps that I couldn't, or whether there's some combination of our ideas that could maybe make this story finally make sense. I hope you're ready, theorists, because it's time for another round of my trash takes.
Sorry.
Leave your theories in the comments or subreddit. I'll pick my favorite in the next episode of Trash.
Let's start with Gibby. As the name implies, Fate Fiona focuses on the character of Fiona Murray, David's mother.
Okay.
He posits that Fiona, after becoming the M1 Mimic and put into the Mex's machine, becomes this overpowering force that manipulates the world around her into repeating history. Not just her history.
Oh,
either, but
wait, the
Fazbear's
machine
history
does that?
as a whole, like the fires, the bad fathers, the houses being on top of the secret facility, and loads more. This
Okay, so the machine
immediately
makes
caught my
that.
attention, as it explores a similar line of thinking to what I was exploring in my games are fiction branch. But it manages to keep it all in universe rather than it being a fictional story borrowing ideas from reality. Gibby suggests that Fiona is able to achieve this world manipulation through three main factors. Firstly, the idea that Fazbear keeps building on top of previous establishments, meaning the remnant and agony of its victims are still present in the area and essentially haunting
Depressing,
the
but
building. This
okay.
explains why in games like FNAF 1, we see the posters on the wall change.
That's
Or
so
why
sad.
in Security Breach, there are random plushies hidden around
Oh
the
yeah,
place.
those
It's the
plushies are alive, I
classic
guess. I
burial
don't
ground
understand
trope.
much, but I
Buildings
think they're
are haunted
alive.
because they are built upon the dead. But when you think about it, thanks to Secret of the Mimic and Ruin, who specifically is dead and underneath all of these buildings? Right in the basement of MCM, waiting to put her son back together, Fiona. Secondly, he looks at the story of Fetch from Fazbear
You know, how
Fright,
deep
and
is
the
that
concept of how
to
human
actually build
thoughts
so many stuff
strong enough
above
to
it?
actually affect subatomic particles in order to manipulate the world around them and other people's thoughts. This is a real-world concept called the zero-point field. Gibby explains that
Is this
down there in
possible?
the basement, Fiona's thoughts are so strong, her desire
My
to
God.
rebuild her family so powerful, that she is able to utilize the zero-point field and affect the
Ooh.
thoughts of those in the area, namely William Afton, subconsciously planting the name David in his head so that he calls his own child David, as well as subconsciously giving him
okay, so the guy
idea
was
to stuff
manipulated all
kids
the
into
time.
suits, like the Mimic used to do back in the 1970s. And finally, there's
Okay, so the guy
physical
was manipulated.
wires. Fiona is plugged into everything Fazbear touches, much like the storyteller was in the Tales from the Pizzaplex
Okay,
books.
is
An AI
William
designed
Afton
to connect
innocent,
to
or-
everything, but ends up infecting
or
it
he
with bad
was
ideas
crazy?
and code.
I don't know,
Similarly,
he was
Fiona
getting
gets plugged into
manipulated.
Fazbear and so witnesses everything that happens throughout Fazbear's history due to the agony and remnant they leave behind, causing the technology to also repeat parts of history, like Fredbear killing David when the opportunity presents itself because her son David also died on the premises, or Glamrock Bonnie being locked away in a back room, destroyed, being watched by possessed wet floorbots, much like Springtrap was locked away in a back room after dying.
She
being
could
watched
actually
by
want that
5
the kid
spirits.
lives. Why did she
Fiona
want
is the
that David
central
died
hub for
again? Like,
everything. With
she's...
her memories and will being so strong, she's forcing history to repeat itself over and over again. Now, when I first
Yeah,
watched
that's
this
bad.
video, I thought it was super out there. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized it tied into a number of theories we'd already had on this channel. We did a theory ages ago about why we thought there
Oh
was
my
so
God,
much
that's
puppet
creepy.
imagery across the Pizzaplex, specifically in the wires connecting everything. At the time, we felt the best option was leaning into the only character we knew that had an association with the puppet, Charlie. We even
Puppets.
equated it to the idea that she was haunting the building like an old
No, I
school
confused
ancient
puppet and the mimic, because I don't know. I should actually just don't confuse both of them.
Idea. It's just we didn't know Fiona was a character in order to tie her to all the puppet imagery instead of Charlie. Admittedly, it may still seem a little strange. Why would Fiona be associated with the puppets? Well, I think we can come up with a good explanation for it. Let's just remove the mask and... Matt, what are you doing here?
Oh my god, poor guy.
Oh, wait, it's because Creators in Fashion is coming back for a second year, right? And you're gonna be the MC. And that's not all. We've got Linus Tech Tips, the Try Guys, and loads more ads.
Okay, I guess.
To show the world that just because we're creators doesn't mean we just create quote-unquote merch. I may even have a special
I don't have merch yet, but okay.
So to find out what that is, plus see a bunch of fun stuff from all of these creators, check out our Sister Location Style Theory on October 9th at 8 p.m. Eastern. Thanks for reminding me, Matt.
Wait, what's Sister Location?
On so that I can tell you all why the puppet makes sense.
Wait, he's not gonna talk?
I suggested that M1 Fiona's memories are becoming muddied thanks to the amount of data she's received from the original games while being used to make Help Wanted. But while I focused solely on what she'd have learned,
why using an Asus monitor? Is this
other characters
like
in those games
partnership or something?
As part of this new
okay, I guess I'm using an Asus laptop. Okay, so yeah, but I'm not paid to do this.
That she identifies
Sister Location is FNAF 5. Ah, okay, thank you.
Together, no matter the cost, for example. But Fiona and the puppet share a couple of close connections too. They're both protectors of children. They both fail at their duty, and the child dies on their watch. Fiona is also a puppeteer, so again, she has an association with puppets. And these similarities all add to M1 Fiona being a confused mess. She can't tell what is her and what is someone else. Is it Glitchtrap? Is it Charlie? Is it David? But that could be why we see all these things connecting the Pizzaplex giving off puppet vibes, even though it's supposed to be Fiona and not Charlie.
You know, that plush is kind of cute and creepy at the same time.
Theory wholesale, it wouldn't just be data, but all the agony and remnant and memories of all the victims who died on this one piece of Fazbear land entering Fiona's system, meaning Charlie's memories are now part of Fiona too. But that also brings up the part of the theory that is one of the biggest debates coming out of Secret of the Mimic. Is there possession, or is it just AI? For this theory to work, it requires you to be of the belief
I don't know anymore, because in the beginning this was about possessing robots, and then became more science, and I just don't know anymore.
Two of the reasons I've seen for M1 being possessed are that she learned to be Fiona after Fiona had died, and that Edwin uses the frequency 4625 on one of the audio logs and hears the voice of Fiona after her death. This frequency is actually associated with a ghost radio frequency in the real world, known as the buzzer. As the name implies, it simply broadcasts a static buzz across the airwaves, but occasionally you can hear words, sometimes even voices in the background. But the key thing is, no one claims to be running it, leading some to believe it's ghosts speaking from beyond the grave. However, upon looking into it
so then FNAF is supernatural or scientific? It's just a mess.
Two other radio stations, the Pip and the Squeaky Wheel, also transmitting a similar signature sound, occasionally interrupted by coded Russian voice messages. It's real messages being sent by real people, not ghosts, which means that if Steelwool is invoking the iconography of frequency 4625, they're telling us, while it may appear to be something paranormal, it's actually a real person, or at least that's sending the message. John FNAF has a great theory about how it's actually the mycelium men who have recorded Fiona trying to help Edwin, because the AI Edwin made in all of his inventions was designed to
know what you want better than you do,
which also explains how M1 learns to
then it's not ghost. Thank you so much for explaining that.
Of her through the mycelium men, which is why she acts like her, but she feels more stilted and
the color is cute. I like it.
For David's special day.
And no, it's not just because she's a robot, but because she never learnt from the real thing. Plus, as I've mentioned before, Scott does seem to be moving away from the old paranormal stories he used to tell.
I have a tendency to lean sci-fi, so anything that involves possession of AI or possession of machines or circuitry. I love that sort of thing.
Since Help Wanted, we've been stories about AI taking over people, not remnant or agony. In the Tales from the Pizzaplex series,
but it was already in the story. It's gonna remove that.
Remnant or agony specifically. There's frailty, where a girl has a remnant necklace similar to the one from To Be Beautiful in Fazbear Fright, but it's rarely the focal point of this series. Again, emphasizing the move away from those old FNAF story beats and more into AI and machine sentience. And without the real spirit of Fiona, it means there's no remnant or agony, and it becomes harder to explain things like the 0-point field. That's not to say it's impossible by any stretch. There are signs of some paranormal things going on at MCM. I mean, the white tiger costume feels very much like old school Golden Freddy. That, or it's just Arnold hallucinating.
I just finished a 36-hour shift and I'm struggling to stay awake.
And the
Bro, how did you get so much time awake?
The game did tease a Fetch sequel, so maybe they
what was that? That was so weird.
If it turns out to be true, Faye Fiona would help to justify my theory that Old Man Consequences is actually what remains of Edwin Murray. I suggested that because Edwin from the books comes back to help destroy the Mimic years later, that even though it seems like he died at the end of Secret of the Mimic,
that's bad.
In reality, he didn't fully die, because no one ever dies in this series. I suggested that the king in Princess Quest, known as Old Man Consequences in the game files, was like Edwin's digital signature, a safety protocol inside the Mimic's programming designed as a failsafe to stop the monster he'd created. Fate Fiona also ties into this theory, just in a more classic FNAF way. Rather than Edwin leaving behind a digital signature,
I'm sorry, wait. Let me wait till the ads are over. You know, this art style is so weird. Like, why are they so square? You know, it's creepy and not creepy at the same time. It's weird. They look like dolls, you know? Like this specific art style. Oh, look, there's some pipes there. And some bricks, too. And some other pipes and pipes. You know? There's something there too. And the floor is wet. And there's more pipes. And there's this machine here. I don't know what that machine is. You know? It's all brown. Nothing much colorful. Yeah, I guess.
Literally his agony and spirit that, like everything else, ended up inside Fiona's
the distortion,
which
lol.
then plugged into all the arcade cabinets in the Pizzaplex, which then allowed him to appear in games like Princess Quest and even
the arcade designs are cute.
So while I'm not entirely sure about the method this theory is based on, I do have to say it helps explain a lot of our past theories.
Look
as well as a dozen other
basket,
theories from
right?
across the internet. I also understand that it would be nice to have things like Remnant and Agony still feel like they're important today and not just a forgotten story device. But at the very least, Gibby and I can agree that one way or another, Fiona is definitely the one running the show here. But that's just one of the branching paths, and if you're enjoying this kind of branching path theory review thing that we're doing here, you should absolutely consider subscribing. Maybe you can hit the button.
I'm watching this because someone sent me, but thank you.
About 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Nice work. Huh, it didn't shut her down though. Ah! Whew. Anyway, the second and probably most requested theory for me to look at is called God David by T-Dreads.
God David?
This one came as so requested is because
David
it actually
is
has
God?
a lot of similarities to the other
what is
paths
this?
I presented. The reason David Murray, David Afton, and Gregory have so many similarities can't be coincidence. They must be the same person. However, rather than it being a bunch of robot kids, T-Dreads takes a slightly different approach. He focuses a lot on Gregory, pointing out a lot of the same similarities I did. Similar appearance, both being called Broken, sitting on a hill with their robotic protector, but the one extra piece he points out is the therapy CDs from Security Breach. These recordings are from therapy sessions with 2 different patients. One is Vanessa, with her being named in the tapes, and one is a mysterious unnamed patient, who we all came to call Patient 46. We theorized early on in the life of Security Breach that Patient 46 was in fact Gregory. This was later seemingly confirmed thanks to the story GGY, where we see a kid called Greg killing off these counselors when they got too close to the truth.
My God, Jesus! Really yeah, that's true. I forgot totally, but it's creepy anyway.
Points out that multiple therapists call him out for making up stories, that he's lying about his past, almost like an AI reading from a script.
The way you told the story is more like you were reading something from a book.
But rather than it being because Gregory is a robot, it's because he's possessed by a version of M2's programming, a version of David Murray. He points specifically to the Balloon World arcade cabinet in Gregory's hidey hole, the one which, as you play, begins to glitch out and become corrupted, ending with the words "good night," as if Gregory is going to sleep and allowing M2 to take control. That's why when the therapists say lines like,
"You had great parents,"
it's because Gregory is telling the story of David's parents, not his own. Edwin definitely wasn't in the running for Father of the Year, and both Edwin and Fiona met tragic ends. But that wasn't true for Gregory's parents. I gotta say,
also cute tiny faces. But who are the parents of Gregory?
Robot kid, I said I wasn't in love with the idea of having more robot kids around. It meant that we had M1, M2, now what? M3?
3, M4, M5, M6, I don't know.
Not enough real people. And this use of the therapy CDs actually
maybe it's infinite. I'm joking.
A robot kid
maybe it is. You don't know how many games they're going to make.
Vanessa wouldn't have physical records or files for the therapists to refer to. They wouldn't be able to say lines like, "You had great parents," because he'd be an anomaly with no past. He literally just showed up one day. But if instead he's a real kid with his mind taken over, then he would have real records that might even explain why he ended up in therapy, because his teachers noticed he suddenly started acting differently. From there, he starts acting like and dressing like a slightly older version of David Murray, just like M1 wanted, only for him to be set free sometime before security breach. The only thing I would question about this idea is the
people are controlled.
What is possessing Gregory. T-Dreads presents it as a version of the Mimic program that contains David's memories, which would seem to imply M2. He uses Balloon World's glitched sun as evidence for this. The character looks a lot like Eclipse, which is a character that represents the collaboration between Fiona Sun and Edwin's Moon. And so that shows us
Fiona
that
kill the
David
owl?
M2 is taking over Gregory's mind. But
bro, I'm
just
still
like in
sad
my
about
previous
that.
theories, there are a few ways you could interpret this, and mine would be slightly different in this case. So far, there's been one AI that clearly has the ability to take over people's minds. Glitch Trap. We saw it with Jeremy, who sadly sliced his face off, and with Vanessa, who mentions that in the therapy tapes there's part of her that is locked away. In many of our previous theories, we've connected Glitch Trap back to the M1 Fiona program, who, after being used to make games like Help Wanted, became muddled and confused as to what her true identity was. M1 Fiona is also represented by Sun, as we see in both the parachute ending of Secret of the Mimic and during Moon.exe. So when we see the sun glitched out in Balloon World, it's possible it's not showing us Eclipse, but simply a glitched out sun. It's sun that itself has been corrupted by the memory and influence of Afton, becoming a glitched trap for Gregory. So if we have an AI program,
maybe it is getting confusing, and no, I'm not understanding much
dialogue with, and it's the same one already taking over the entire Pizzaplex. It makes the most sense.
Good luck, honestly. I'm going to work. Patuti, I got another sub. Thank you. Also, good job with work. Thank you for the cute tiny emotes.
The same problem that I had with my own Gregbot theory, where it's just so many of one thing, robot kids or
You're so adorable. I love you.
So complicated that it's just not satisfying anymore. It's Occam's razor. Sometimes the simplest solution is the right solution. It being an AI, M1, wouldn't actually change the fact that Gregory has been...
Oh, sorry, the ads.
You're watching a toothbrush?
Yeah, he got the job now. So that's why there's no more collab streams.
David either. After all, M2 was a copy of M1's programming, and we theorize that M2 was originally being taught on how to be David through Moon.exe, essentially using the memories M1 factory had of David to help recreate him. It's just doing the same thing in Gregory's head. It would also tie more into Gregory's persona that we see in GGY, where he takes on the moniker of Dr. Rabbit, which is
unfortunate.
more connected to Glitch Trap than to M2 specifically. Plus, Gregory is shown to be hacking the
oh my god. Shiny Pikachu. Yeah, I would love that a creature would be unemployed and be just enjoying life.
Trying to take control in order
but he wants to get the job, so yeah.
That's just one part of that theory. The second half focuses on the similarities between David Murray and David Afton. T-Dreads once again does his due diligence and
what about stream on weekends? Oh bro, I have to clean my house and take care of all of the stuff here, and yes, to go to his music stuff. Because he's in a band.
Remembering a different child's memories.
So we can stream on weekends.
Right next to a
That's
picture
the
of Foxy
problem.
writing a note,
I'm seeing if I
and
can
in
interchange
.exe,
it to the
there's a
Mother
note
post
asking
in the
them
morning.
to bring back the sun because he misses them. Again, it makes it hard to deny there's a connection here. The challenge becomes the how of it all. Even T-Dreads admits that this part is a bit of a
You don't need to clean if you don't have gas. No, I need to clean. Shiny Pikachu. Believe me. Believe me, I need to clean. It's not a simple cleaning every week. It's a really profound cleaning I have to do.
Mimic technology have the same black eyes with white dots.
Oh, yes, so cute
resides in a
plushies.
spring body plush in order to swap minds with Vanessa, and this particular story structure is repeated all over the books like the week before.
It's a big house, it needs time to organize and clean, and there's other stuff too.
In a story called Lonely Freddy. A small Freddy asks a child questions to learn more about them in order to assume their identity, eventually swapping bodies with them. Ironically, this is almost identical to a theory we had many years ago. It's just now we
Why so big?
why.
My
M1
grandparents'
needs
house.
An animatronic genius like Edwin, and now
It's a farmhouse.
to be able to rebuild her son.
And I
is
love my
intrigued
house.
by these machines that feel alive.
It was made for a
he's
family
willing
of
to
like
go along
4 or
and
5
plan
people.
so that he can study it.
But then they died.
So much.
Sorry.
And again, lines up with the
Thank
same
you.
motivations I presented. The main challenge I had with it was the timing. In our original
Cute
theory,
animal,
and
thank
also
you.
in T-Dread's theory,
And
it
yes, I'll
presents
pay
the
attention to my
questions
posture.
that my friend
I
Fred
like when we
/
live together,
Freddy is
so it
asking,
should be some slide maybe we'll stream on weekends and I will see. Okay, thank you.
Murray once again. Except by the time we see him in the FNAF 4 minigames, he's already exhibiting signs that he is David
How many
Murray. He's
FNAF
wearing the same
left?
clothes, carrying the plushie around, he's scared of Foxy, has the same name. I suppose
3.
you could argue that these things are just things William
3 left.
conditioned him to do in order to make him susceptible to the mind transfer. But then, when does he take over? Is it after he gets bit, when he says, I'll put you back together? But then what happens to him after that? Why does he disappear from the story? And if it's before that moment, then it means Fredbear wouldn't have any need to ask those questions or be the M2 AI because he's already taken
Now I'm
over
confused.
David
Now
Attenborough's
is the
mind.
mimic
Now,
that
all
is
of
in
that being said, I
everything
do
from
recognize that there's definite
nowhere?
evidence for the crying child being more like a human child than a robot one like I presented originally. After all, the key evidence that T-Dreads refers to, the security logbook, has 2 spirits talking
Why
to
do
one
we
another.
still
Vengeful
call the
spirit Cassidy and
crying
the spirit
child
David.
crying child?
If the Fredbear plush was the
It's
M2
David.
David Murray
Sad.
program, then David
Okay.
Attenborough's spirit would be
Sad I don't
present
see
and
the
able to
stream in a
attach
bit,
itself
but
to
also we should
Fredbear
catch
in
up
order
on
to
the
take
voice. I
control
met the time
and
we
then
got a
talk to
lobster.
Cassidy. Plus, in the
Yes, I
logbook,
know
we
I
see
posted
David's
the clip,
his
lol.
memory. Hence, all the questions about
Don't
David's
worry,
toys,
Kitty Patootie,
rides,
it's
even
fine. No idea when you
Cassidy
got it.
is trying to help him remember. Maybe
Like
because his
last
own
week,
memories have
maybe.
been suppressed for so
Maybe
long
last
by
week, I'm not
David.
sure.
Much like with Gregory and the therapy CDs. Although we don't ever
Therapy
get the
CDs.
last name from
I
that
look at
spirit.
everywhere.
So I suppose there is a chance that this is really David Murray's spirit, trying to remember
It's a
itself after years
glitch.
of
It's a
wandering.
glitch.
Kinda
It
like
was
if you happened to Jake
God,
in
Cult
the
of the
Stick
Lamb
Fighters. I mean,
God that
Cassidy
gave me the
is
lobster.
calling out his
It was a
favorite ride, the
miracle.
carousel, which, as
A
T-Dread
miracle.
points out, the crying child, David, wouldn't have ever
Because
witnessed.
God blesses
But we know that David
Manzanitism.
Murray did. And all of this can be happening
And he
while M2
gave
is
us a
walking
lobster.
around dressed like David Murray.
Maybe drop it
Now
around on
under
Little
the
Crusade long
watchful
ago. We
eye
never
of
said.
William Afton. And see, this
Maybe
is why I
that?
did the branching
Maybe?
parts in that original
I'm
theory
not
to
sure.
begin with, because it's important to explore all of the options. And I'm so glad to see other theorists exploring alternative ideas from the same evidence, while bringing up new points that agree
So many
but also
paper, Jesus
counter
Christ.
my own. Every theory has its strengths and weaknesses, but just because we don't like one part of the theory doesn't mean we have to throw the animatronic baby out with the bathwater. I love the evidence surrounding
Bathwater?
Gregory's possession by the mimic. We may differ on the specifics, but it solves one of the big problems I had with the Gregbot
What
theory.
you
Even if I
yapping
don't believe
about?
that M1 is physically
So
possessed by Fiona,
basically,
doesn't mean that I
from
can't
nowhere we
use
got the
parts of that
lobster
theory
and
to
Cult
fill
of the
the
Lamb.
gaps
That
I
was
had
the
with
only
characters
thing we
like
needed to
Ultimate
finish the
Consequences or
Fisherman's
Puppet.
Quest.
And I hope that both Gibby and T-Dreads are able to
We
take
don't
some of
know
the
how did
additional
it get to my
characters that I've
inventory.
made
It just
and run
appeared
with them
a
to help
lobster
develop
there.
their theories
And I
going
was
forward.
like
The
for
point
like
is, by
almost a week
exploring
or two
all the
trying to get a
options, we
lobster
can
in the
get a
game.
better sense of what's really going on. So let me know in the comments what you think. Do you think the answer is one of these alternative branching paths? Or do you think it's some combination of them? All I ask is that you remember to be kind and patient with one another. Because
Okay,
at the
I
end of
will
the
be
day,
patient,
it's all
don't
just
worry.
a theory. A game theory. Thanks for watching.
World premiere on Game Theory.
The crying child's name has been...
2 more
Who
videos
caused the
after
Biter
this
Baby
one.
3? Why does Monty hate Bonnie? And what does David Afton's favorite show have to do with the Mimic? All these
Bro, now the
questions
Mimic is
and
in
more are
everything.
what I'm
This is so
attempting to answer today.
annoying. And before, you know, I remember
Hello,
when it
Internet.
was just
Welcome to Game Theory,
for
the show that keeps on
animatronics.
giving,
Now
like,
it's
the
just
hidden
so much
details in a FNAF
stuff. My
game. Although,
god.
hopefully we're less
It's so
complicated.
confusing.
I mean, how often do we find small pieces in this franchise that either don't go anywhere or don't connect to any of the big questions we're actually asking? And sometimes the pieces don't even get discovered until way after the game releases. Like
I
the
like
Springboks
puzzle
design with possibly
pieces.
Henry's signature.
I like
as pointed out
jigsaw
by
puzzles.
Artist
Other types
Francis,
of
or
puzzles
there's
are
an
kinda
update added to the
confusing.
game way after its release that changes small details, like this random silhouette in the window that I saw Right Host talking about. The trouble
Wait,
is,
what?
when they are just small pieces, it can be hard to justify talking about them because they're just that small. That one thing is interesting,
Bro, they,
for sure,
maybe
but
they're
doesn't
important even they're
change
small.
anything. However, as I've been going back through our FNAF archives and weighing up all of these small pieces that have been brought to light either through more research on my end or from other talented theorists in the space, I believe I found a few interesting details that are worth talking about. So today, I want to present 3 mini theories that, if true, would change or expand on previous theories we've explored in the past. Think of them like theory DLC. Don't worry, I'll be sure to
DLC, bro, I didn't pay for anything, I'm sorry.
Let's start with one that's actually been on my mind for a few years.
Because I
Theory
asked to
number 1,
see a DLC
Henry
with money
stole
now.
Edwin's design. In my final Secret of the Mimic theory, I
Bro,
spoke a
but
lot
in the
about
other two
whether
you said
Henry
it
and Afton
wasn't.
stole designs from Edwin Murray. I basically settled on the idea that the answer was kinda yes. Although
What?
there was a chance that Henry did actually collaborate on some things with Edwin, and he definitely was designing some stuff himself, as he was the one changing the designs from Edwin.
I got the change order from Hen last night.
But after that video in our live talkback, ID brought to my attention their video and the blueprint that, unlike all the others we see in Murray's Costume Manor, didn't have the ECM logo on it, but instead a signature that looks like it could be Henry's, adding credence to the fact that
yeah, that's a
Henry
weird
was
signature,
making
but I
stuff.
guess.
She also has a really cool explanation for Henry's Prisons of My Making line, while also keeping the FNAF 1 animatronics as Edwin's designs like we see in the basement. Basically suggesting that Henry saw those designs, upgraded them to make the Endo O2s, and then put them in the shells that Edwin had been making for the classic animatronics, which is why in Into the Pit, which takes place in 1985, we see classic Freddy and the gang, but with Endo O2s inside them. It's a very cool video, and I highly recommend you watch it, but
yeah, we got that
Henry
game.
Was definitely designing stuff got me thinking about what else we've attributed to him in the past. You see, over the years, we've focused a lot on Henry's design philosophy when it comes to animatronics. ID's theory would align with previous theories we've had about the Wizards definitely being early Henry designs, where we focused on aspects like the jaws to make that connection. The Withered animatronics have 2 types of jaws.
They see the jaws, they see the
separated mouth
fingers, they
and
see
head
the
connected by
eyes,
bars. Now, the
they
reason
see
we felt like this could
the
be
jaw
attributed to Henry
movements.
was because of the other times this design
They see
comes
the
up in
hands.
franchise, namely FNAF 6. In that game, we're introduced to Lefty, a Freddy-like character designed specifically to capture the puppet. Henry tells us in the tapes that
You have all been called here.
and so, with Lefty having the puppet inside, now being dragged back against its will, it stands to reason that Lefty was made by Henry. And wouldn't you know it, it
Bro, what
too
do you
has
mean?
the same piston-like jaw mechanism. We then see this repeated
Yeah.
in other animatronics that connect to Lefty, the Rockstar animatronics, and we see it with the rudimentary, mediocre melodies. Now, for the longest time, even though you buy the mediocre melodies from a third party in the game, we theorized that these were actually shell companies for Henry to make his scheme happen. And thanks to stories like Puppet Carver, that
I don't
also
understand
includes
that much
rudimentary
about that
animatronics
kind
for
of
a
stuff.
banjo playing pig and a frog, we felt like we were being shown that Henry was the creator of the mediocres, and that they were some of his first, hence the battery packs they needed to operate. However, this is where Secret of the Mimic comes in and completely upends the idea, like it did with so many other theories. Because in this game, we see original designs for these characters, like a frog, a pig, an elephant, and a hippo. So again, these characters feel like they were were Edwin's. But the big issue is this message right here. Quote, "Me and Stan are out of here. It's time to jump ship before things get ugly. I have a bunch of Fiona's character patterns and Stan is taking what he can. Join us. With everything we know about the restaurant project, we can start our own machine shop." So again,
wait, what? They're gonna steal stuff?
Designs were originally part of Murray's. But the real important part is the name that's mentioned, Stan. That might not mean anything to you. It's a pretty generic name, to be honest, but it has shown up in the franchise once before, in FNAF 6. The company you buy
doesn't know about elusive
from
lobster.
Stan's
Oh my god,
Budget.
cute tiny emote.
This
Thank
guy
you,
and
Kitty
his friend
Fatuti.
left MCM,
For the
sold
kitty
Fiona's
emotes.
designs, and then started a robot shop, which we then buy from in FNAF 6. That's why in the character encyclopedia, Ned Bear's entry questions whether he was altered from Freddy Fazbear, quote, "to avoid copyright issues. It was originally a Freddy that Stan stole from the company and made his own, only to sell it back to Fazbear
Well, if I go
years
to work,
later."
okay,
The
Kitty
most
Fatuti, have
frustrating
good
part about
work.
this isn't the
See
fact
y'all
that
later.
Henry
See
didn't
ya.
make the
You're
mediocre
kitty.
melodies.
You're
I've made
adorable.
my peace with that. It's that we used to be able to use these animatronic designs to distinguish who made them. And
No, I
now
kinda
it
like
feels
the
this is
mediocre
just how
melodies.
people
They're
make
cute.
animatronics, and they can be anyone's. Are the rock stars actually Henry's, or is that another real company where he then took an old rockstar Freddy and turned him into Lefty? It just means we're back to square one with knowing who made what exactly. Well, kinda. See, there is one more animatronic that uses this design that I've not mentioned.
Golden
One that
Freddy?
we also attributed to Henry in the past, and one that came before all of these other designs.
Golden
Fredbear. In the FNAF
Fredbear,
minigames,
okay.
we see multiple versions of Fredbear at the diner location, some being worn by staff, others are in animatronic mode. However, if we take a look at the iconic one that ends up crunching down on one David Afton, what do you notice? That same piston-like jaw design. But every Golden Freddy or Fredbear we've seen in this franchise up until this point hasn't had that design detail. They all have designs more similar to Freddy or Withered Freddy, hinged or attached.
Withered
jaws, not
Freddy?
pistons. But do you know where we
Where did he-
do see a piston-based
Okay, I
jaw
guess there's
design
more
for Fredbear?
animatronics than I
Down in
know.
the basement of MCM. This version of Fredbear has a prototype label on the back of its head, implying that this is one of the designs we read about from Edwin. Quote, "Fiona, the new spring locks are working well, even with the water damage. They should be ready for the diner soon." These are the new designs Edwin makes to avoid the classic water damage prone designs that he and Henry had previously made, which is great if you want to avoid a lawsuit, and given the state of Edwin's bank account, I think that'll be music to
I
your
think,
ears.
okay. Bird hats. Okay, let's put the bird hats. Let me just take... delete. Okay, good. Yeah, oh my god, you're so
It's a
cool.
shame,
Cool,
really.
cute,
If he had
no
just
false.
partnered up with Chime like we have, he could have used my pay to
Okay,
access
more
up to
ads,
$500 of
okay.
his pay before payday to help handle some of these expenses. In case what I've just said didn't give it away, Chime is the most loved banking app helping people to bank smarter. And their My Pay
Ooh,
feature is
foods.
no joke. As I'm sure you're aware,
Wait,
the holidays
what?
are coming
You-
up. It feels like they come around sooner
Why
and
did
sooner
they
every
pay you
year, but all of
$500?
that hot cocoa, the presents, and the Christmas cheer, yeah, it costs money. And things are more expensive than ever. So Chime had the idea to help us all out by giving us access to our pay a little bit early, to help stretch out those gift budgets a little bit further. Or maybe you have budgeted all of your gifts really smartly, but then your heating system packs in, or your oven breaks. How are you going to enjoy that spatchcock Christmas turkey now? Wait, do you guys even eat turkey for Christmas? Or is that just Thanksgiving? Give me a sec. Christmas ham? Yeah, that's probably good enough. The point
Bro,
is,
here in my
unexpected
country,
expenses happen,
we
and if
eat
life doesn't wait
fish.
for payday, neither should you. Plus, it's
Normal
not like
people
Chime's gonna
eat
leave you
fish
out in the cold just hoping
on
it comes
Christmas.
through
I
soon rather than
eat
the
like a
reality of
frozen
taking weeks and
pizza.
weeks. With my pay, you
And
can
I
get your
eat it
money
up
within
and eat it
24
in
hours.
Christmas.
So, if you need some help this Christmas season, or you want to know how Chime can help you with your finances in other ways, head on down to the description and click the link or scan the QR code on screen to start using Chime today. And if you do, you could receive up to $350
There's so
as a
much
little
money. This
holiday
is
bonus
weird.
from them,
How
which
do you
again,
get
is
so
probably gonna
much
help with all of those
money?
gifts. So thanks again to Chime for sponsoring this video, and sorry we weren't able to tell you about it sooner, Edwin. Maybe this would have been the thing to save you. But at least you made a better version of Fredbear. Like I was saying, this new version of Fredbear wasn't susceptible to water damage. And this one has that classic piston jaw. It seems like, despite the project not being fully finished, and this one just being a prototype, Fazbear still wanted more versions of Fredbear in their diner, and so brought this version to fill in that slot, which is why we see multiple versions throughout the minigame. I mean, Edwin does say that these new designs have, quote, odd behaviors, like say, not stopping its mouth movement when there's something clearly caught inside. It also means that both Stan, who left the company to start his own business, and Henry, who bought all of MCM's designs, were all copying and working off of Edwin's original designs.
Bro, guy got erased from history.
To him again. And so if we ever see any animatronics in the future with this design, while they might not physically be made by Edwin, we should take a look because it's clearly copying his original designs and we can likely trace it back to him in some way. However, this also raises a, let's call it, disturbing truth. If this Fredbear we see in the diner is actually the prototype from down in the basement of MCM, then that would mean it wasn't Henry's design that got David Afton killed, it was Edwin's, which then changes a lot of Afton's motivations. We've commonly looked at this moment as the reason William is sent on a quest, starting with Charlie. It's revenge on the man who made the machine that killed his son. But now, if it's Edwin's machine, it throws into question why Afton
maybe Afton didn't know.
More into the idea
just
that he never really cared about his kids and was more interested in just experimenting and, well, murder. But speaking of David Afton, theory number 2, David Afton is possessed. I recently did a trash episode where I explored the theory God David by
David.
That theory basically focuses on the idea that David Murray, David Afton, and Gregory are also similar because David Afton and Gregory are both possessed by a version of the Mimic AI.
Well, how an AI can possess people? It's not a spirit,
However,
but okay.
He recognized some of it was a bit of a stretch, namely the how of it all when it came to the possession of David Afton. His solution was that it was psychic friend Fredbear containing a version of the Mimic AI that then transferred into David Afton, much like the Lonely Freddy's work in the Fazbear Fright story. But like I say, even he recognized it was a bit of a stretch, and I also
because how an AI possesses
that the
people?
timeline didn't really add up. If psychic friend Fredbear was asking questions in order to take possession, then why is David Afton already acting and looking like David Murray? If David Afton is already possessed, then why is Fredbear asking questions or speaking at all? That being said,
I don't know anymore.
David Afton being possessed by AI, and so I was trying to see if I could find any more evidence to back up this idea and maybe solidify the solution. And I think there is, in the form of 2 stories from Tales from the Pizzaplex. Ones that T-Dreads didn't mention, B7 and B7-2. B7 was all about a kid named Billy that became obsessed with animatronics, so much so he decided to literally become one himself. He got surgery to remove his limbs and replace them with prosthetics. Eventually, he realizes his mistake and gets himself crushed in a junkyard. The sequel starts in a hospital. Billy somehow survived his injuries and is now learning to live life without his animatronic limbs. But while in hospital, he is haunted by those same animatronic limbs that once were a part of him, and they are desperate to become one with him again.
Bro,
Eventually,
what is this?
He gets out and moves in with his grandmother, who ends up killing B7 in the end, allowing Billy to live life on his own, where he can go out and find his mysterious absent father.
What story is this?
Torment. So why do I think this is important to the story of David
That's
Afton?
so a random story, but okay. I know it's in the books, but it's random.
Story implies there is more to this character and his story than we may have first thought. He's actively trying to draw our attention to it, and as I looked back over it, there are a few details that stood out to me that begin to connect the dots. Firstly, Grandma's house. Throughout this story, Billy is learning what it means to be a human after years of believing he's an animatronic. And he's very detailed.
But is he an animatronic or not?
Over and over again. Flowers and a grandfather clock. Quote, Grandma's house was surrounded by several flower beds. The room's yellow walls were covered in paintings and photographs of flowers. In the corner of the living room, a heavily carved wood grandfather clock guarded the space. A big brass pendulum attached to a long metal rod swung back and forth inside the clock. Billy and his grandmother watched the grandfather clock's pendulum swing back and forth. There are a lot more examples, but you get the idea. Flowers and grandfather clocks are repeatedly pointed out, despite having little to no effect on the story. So my theory is
maybe
they keep mentioning it, why are they important? Well, when I see Grandfather Clock, I immediately think back to the old FNAF 4 house and dream theory. The Grandfather Clock was instrumental to those theories, and it's the only time we've ever seen a Grandfather Clock like this. And what
then
else
the
do we
flowers.
see around the FNAF 4 house? Several flower beds and pictures of flowers on the wall. Separate from Grandmother's house, we're also following the idea of a robot wanting to join the
thank you.
Self. And in God David, T-Dreads is theorizing that a version of the Mimic program is trying to merge with David Afton in order to become its true self again, David Murray. We also have a kid who believes he is a robot, which you could argue is what happened to David Afton when he becomes possessed by a robot AI.
Bro, when did the cry child believe it was a
David
robot?
Murray, he's becoming M2, an AI version of David, now just
I don't know where this is coming from, but
okay.
okay.
The mysterious absent father character, and it sure seems like Billy might be reflecting little old David in some way. But as the wise elder Unwithered Tree stated in T-Dread's God David video, if that is the case, then what are we supposed to be learning about David Afton from this story? Well, I think it might actually answer T-Dread's issue around his possession. At the very beginning of B7, little Billy becomes obsessed with animatronics to the point he believes he is one, almost like he's being mind controlled or possessed. And it all starts with him watching a show called Freddy and Friends.
Ooh.
And what's on the TV in the Afton house in FNAF 4? The Fazbear TV show Fredbear and Friends. Could it be that rather than psychic friend Fredbear being the way the Mimic possessed David Afton, instead it was the TV? That would leave psychic friend Fredbear to keep the role he's always had, being a way for Afton to spy on his kids, maybe even check in and ask questions to make sure the possession was successful, but still allow for the possession of David Afton by the Mimic.
Everything is possessed by
it's
an AI now?
stretch, I admit, but so was the Lonely Freddy idea in the first place. So I do think it's worth thinking about this kind of symbolism between characters. And speaking of, theory number 3, the Monty and Bonnie feud solved. Since Security Breach,
what is a
it's
feud?
abundantly clear that there's some kind of beef going on between Monty and Bonnie. In Security Breach itself, we got Fazwatch messages showing us Glamrock Bonnie's strange movements around the Pizzaplex, which eventually led him to Monty Golf, and he was never seen again. In the interactive novel VIP, we find the Bonnie go-kart has been sabotaged with Monty mix, and if you throw a packet of Bonnie brand Monty,
fuse can also mean merged. Thank you.
Bonnie's, and it all comes to a head in Ruin when we find Glamrock Bonnie completely, well, ruined, with green and purple paint across his broken chest, just like Monty's claws. Now, this whole thing has been massively debated in the community. Did Monty do it? Was he framed? Why would Monty?
Probably Monty did it. Monty is crazy for what I see in these videos.
This mystery to rest, and it's all because of symbolism. FNAF lore has always been complicated, and so over the years, instead of just relying on the physical evidence in front of us, we've tried to use methods like symbolism to help explain previously unexplainable situations. One of the examples we tend to use a lot is that Henry is associated with Freddy and Afton with Bonnie. They used to wear those costumes at the start of the franchise, like at Fredbear's Family Diner, and so anytime we see Freddy and Bonnie, we should be checking for some kind of symbolic double meaning about William and Henry. When Secret of the Mimic came out,
imagine like the colors also match. William is purple, Bonnie is purple, Freddy is yellow.
And Foxy. Suddenly, we had our core.
Proceed with this.
I was excited to dive into what that symbolism could mean for other parts of the franchise. That was until I saw this video by Gibby's Horror Homestead. The video is mostly talking about my theory as to whether Old Man Consequences is actually Edwin Murray in some way, which I have to say is awesome to see. Again, solving FNAF requires collaboration. But during that video, he points out that in the basement Proto Freddy's and in the storybook during the secret ending, it's not just 4 characters, it's 6. They add Bob
look, there's a tiny doggo.
Gibby then suggests that while Edwin could be Foxy, it's equally likely it could be Monty, with Bob and Foxy representing other characters we may not fully know about. And when I heard
tell me that he possessed Monty.
Monty is all over MCM, but rather than the violent rock star we know from Security Breach, he's, for lack of a better term, a chill hillbilly croc. Hillbilly is historically a derogatory stereotype used for people who live in rural mountainous areas of the US and are often associated with being poor and unsophisticated. And now, this is going to come off as a very strange segue, but hear me out. Let's take a look at Edwin. As Arnold drives to MCM, there is nothing else around. Edwin lives on a hill in what feels like the middle of nowhere. He's
looks like a mansion.
He's also broke, especially by the time he ends up working on the Proto Freddys in the basement.
Bank account status. Overdrawn 11. Loan payments are past due.
And his designs or approach to animatronics and business is generally rushed, prone to failure, or you could say unsophisticated, especially when you compare it to Afton and his very successful
money.
To be clear, I am not saying that Edwin is literally a hillbilly, but some of those traits do translate symbolically to what we see from Edwin, making Monty a pretty good symbolic stand-in. He's also made by Edwin, which feels like an important part of the symbolic attachment idea, and to top it all off, his inclusion matches Edwin's inclusion in the franchise. When we look at someone like Fiona being Chica, Fiona may have died in Security Breach, but M1
she died in Security Breach? Didn't she die before?
And all of the FNAF locations probably, just like Chica is present in all the games. But now look at Monty. Monty is part of the Proto Freddys at the start of the franchise, only to disappear and then suddenly show up again in Security Breach, which feels just like Edwin's part in the story. He was part of the early days of Freddy's, gets removed from the story both by Fazbear and literally by Scott, and then becomes relevant again in the modern day with Security Breach thanks to the Mimic storyline. This could mean that Edwin isn't dead and is gonna show up again to stop the Mimic. Or it might mean he was right all along and Edwin is Old Man Consequences, and his association with Monty is why he appears with a crocodile head in Ultimate Custom Night and FNAF World. But regardless of how he's showing up, the idea that Monty symbolically represents Edwin finally explains the Monty and Bonnie feud. In The Storyteller from Tales from the Pizzaplex, we learn that the M1 program is put in charge of the Pizzaplex, literally connected to everything, and is responsible for creating new stories for these characters. Suddenly, they begin acting up, and I believe this is what we're seeing in Security Breach. An AI can't create stories. It's going to be remixing stuff from what it's seen and learnt. Throughout Secret of the Mimic, Edwin shows disdain for Afton and Fazbear.
Someone told them about M2. Well, they can't have it. I'm not changing a single bit of her work, and they can't make me. Don't trust them. Never tell them they want to destroy you.
He's angry at Afton for stealing his employees and ideas, buying out his business, changing Fiona's designs, and setting
Hello, Shield Gamer, how are you?
Mind, Afton is destroying him and everything he's built.
Poor guy, bro.
One, the machine designed to mimic Edwin's wife, Fiona, would have been around to witness all of it. He'd have vented to her. She'd have heard his recordings, so Edwin's perspective became her perspective. Flash forward several decades, and
all this finishes. Yay!
Over the top.
Was it easy? How it was easy.
Like him, and throwing fits over Candy because the Mimic is doing exactly what we've been doing, associating characters with their human counterparts, all from the perspective of the wife bot that was there to witness the destruction Fazbear caused. It's why Glamour Freddy and Glamour Bonnie are best friends forever. From the Murray's perspective,
got 7 slay, but okay, tell.
So, when the Mimic takes over, she makes that a reality. And that is why
hopefully
Monty
it was an easy test.
Monty is Edwin, and
I cheated and I was uncut.
Afton destroyed
okay, I guess if you were uncut, it's okay. I never cheated on a test, but hopefully it was not stressing.
Candy and not him. It's a reminder of Afton's success over Edwin's. So, he sabotages.
Well, at least if you get good grades, I'm happy. If you're happy, I'm happy.
Revenge Edwin wanted, destroying Bonnie, just like Afton had destroyed his life decades ago. And remember, even after Bonnie is destroyed, Monty doesn't stop. His next objective, remove Glamrock Freddy from the picture too. During one of the endings, we see
poor
Monty
Freddy.
The star. And during
my BPM was over on
Jesus. Take center stage.
Shield Gamer, please don't die.
Because again, Afton wasn't the only one at fault. Henry, the man Edwin considered a friend,
my God, are you okay?
Betrayed him and sided with Afton.
I'm worried now.
Fiona was right. They don't think of me as a friend anymore. This is the last project I ever do for them.
And so, in this world where the Mimic is creating
my hands were
stories,
shaking. I believe that. Cheating on a test must be so hard.
Where he ends up on top, destroying the very people.
But well, at least you got it.
That's just a theory. A game theory! Thanks for watching.
World premiere on Game Theory.
Was I wrong about FNAF Secret of the
Okay, after this is the last
what
video.
Was in the FNAF 4
well, it's a very
box?
smart way to cheat. What is the way then?
Since it first appeared back in 2015, and yet
well, I'm not on school anymore, but it's cool to know.
He doesn't really know anymore. Naturally, this felt like a gut punch to us theorists. People were mad, to say the least. But my question is, was he wrong?
As my sports smartwatch.
Should he have planned for this better?
Ooh, slay. What is a sports smartwatch? It's a smartwatch, my watch.
Genius.
Bro, no way you can actually use that to cheat. That's so slay.
The biggest challenge is thinking inside the box. Or at least
they don't ban that in schools, like in my school. I never saw someone with that.
Was the big reward you got for beating Night 7 in FNAF 4. Once you hit 6 AM, you'd see this box with 2 locks and the words, "Perhaps some things are best left forgotten for now." At the time, Scott Cawthon expected theorists to
I'll just go some photos for wallpapers.
Game. And once they did, oh
my god, you're so smart, Jesus Christ.
After a mere month of watching the fandom spin around in circles, he realized that no one was even close. So instead of waiting it out, he decided to keep the box closed for good, writing in a Steam post, "Perhaps some things are best left forgotten forever."
Only the final limit of but it was enough. Okay.
Wild for the better part of a decade. There have been theories.
You know, that's so smart. I never thought of that. Or maybe I would thought of it, but I don't know, man. I don't like to cheat on tests.
And it seemed like the box was going to join the creation of Stone.
When I was on university, I saw a girl in front of me using ChatGPT in all of the tests, bro. And I studied a lot, and the girl, I think, got a great grade, and I got like a mediocre grade. Well, in school phones are allowed. Yeah, in my classes, like they obligate you to put the phone in the. In my school, no. In the schools I went to, one of them phones were banned.
So prominently, and we've spent years.
Yes, only depending on the school. Apparently, I can have a her phone while I work. I'll listen to the stream if I didn't left mine at home one.
And people were not shy about saying.
Bro, Jesus Christ, Kitty Patootie, what the hell?
Betrayal to find out that the big mystery was really just a nothing box. For others, it was much worse.
You know, sometimes we had to put the depending on the story. On the schools I had a school where only on breaks, a school when it was banned, another school when it was banned. A school you can use it on class, depending on it, and on breaks and stuff. And then another school that was like that, and some teachers actually made you put the phones on their table, so you don't cheat.
Neither is for the reasons you'd think. I know, typical FNAF, right? So come with me as I go through my box of old film school literary techniques to see whether there should ever have been something inside the FNAF 4 box. In the full context of Scott's answer, he talks about his writing process and how he puts ideas into his games that develop over time. He likens his ideas to the start of a rope, and when he continues to write, he pulls on that rope. Eventually, the rope leads to something satisfying.
There are a lot of things that are
Bro, Kitty Patootie, I have an idea. You get one of those fancy stuff you can, like an intercom, then you can talk while you work with me, and then we can collab stream while you work. I'm joking, don't do that.
And just fits into place perfectly.
So, to be clear, when Scott says he didn't pursue the contents of the box and doesn't know if he can find those contents again, he's not saying that it slipped his mind or that he misplaced a document in his basement that has a definitive answer. He's saying that his original idea was never fully developed. He never finished pulling on that rope to find the definitive answer. Then, over 11 years, a saga of games, dozens of books, and 2 movies, that rope became harder and harder to pull. The rope frayed into strands that became knotted into different ropes, and other strands that were cut off entirely. Both the rope and the tapestry it was a part of changed. Now, if Scott wants to pull the piece of the lockbox rope that he does have, he needs to be careful or it will unravel everything. Oh hey, Future Tom here. So I recorded this video a few weeks ago, and then I went on vacation, and during that time, Scott released this, the Ultimate Guide 2.0.
Slay.
There's a
More
strange
books.
entry called Chica's Secret Party, a game that nobody ever knew existed. Now, this thing needs a whole episode on its own, but I wanted to mention it because here it says, it's here you'll catch a glimpse of a box that longtime fans will be familiar with, as well as a peek inside, which won't be spoiled here. This implies there was something inside the box and that Scott had figured it out all the way back in 2016. But remember, in Scott's first interview with Dorco, he mentioned how Matt was right and that the contents of the box have changed over time, meaning he may have known what was gonna be in it back in 2016.
Okay, so there's no complete answer of what's in the box.
To change, and now he doesn't know exactly what it is. Plus, the
Bro,
Ultimate
what?
Guides are notoriously bad on the accuracy front. And if Scott remembers this supposedly real game enough to bring it up a year after the interview, he could have just said, yep, there is, and no one's found it yet. Tee-hee! Rather than the controversial answer that got people upset in the first place. Scott is known for winding up the fan base after all. That would feel much more in character for him. So yeah, I don't really think this is going to change anything I'm going to say, but I wanted to mention it in case you wondered why I didn't bring it up for the rest of the video. But let's get back to Past Me and Scott's supposed lack of forward planning. The general consensus I saw online focused on this being the problem. To a lot of people, this felt laughably amateurish, that he put such importance on an undercooked plot thread to just have faith that any random idea you have will work out eventually. If he was a good writer, he would make sure that all the pieces were actually in place for us, that they fit together nicely.
Don't tell me this is bad writing.
What the ending of the story is to pay off whatever he set up throughout. Basically, what people were saying is that to be a good writer, you have to be what the writing world knows as a plotter. You would have thought creative writers could have come up with a more, I don't know, creative name for themselves, but actually, its serious, straightforward nature tells you everything you need to know about them. Plotters are the ones with dozens of note cards, literally plotting out every part of the story before they even begin writing. The main place you'll see plotters work is in movie scripts. Oh, hang on.
What? Why is there like Gravity Falls stuff there?
Going on my territory?
Oh, hey, Lee. I was just, oh, look! A shiny new video game TV show.
Crash Bandicoot!
Did you seriously think that was gonna work?
It's animated, not live action?
Listen, I'm gonna go, but not because you told me to. Don't touch my stuff.
Now, where was I? Oh, yeah. Screenplays are a great example of plotter-written stories being used to incredible effectiveness. 99% of movies you've seen are written as outlines first. Most moviegoers aren't willing to sit through more than 1.5 to 2.5 hours, so that means your script can only be so long. The standard for movie scripts is that 1 page equals 1 minute of screen time. So that means your story has to fit within 90 to 150 pages. When you do plan for it, you get fantastic movies.
I have a book that I wanted to maybe one day make a movie of. It's like I write. And one day I'll release it, and the first book is already almost 900 pages. Jesus Christ.
Because you have to go back retroactively to either cut things down or bulk them up.
And look, if the people don't want to stay 2 hours on the movie, I don't care. If I like the movie, I will stay whenever I want, since I have Popcorns and Company.
And so, before any script is written, we have outlined the entire episode. Its intro, the evidence, the twist, all to fit within that time frame. Although, while I have you here, even though YouTube is pushing for longer videos, I'd love to know what you prefer. If you like longer episodes like this one, ones that are like 20 to 30 minutes, hit the subscribe button. And if you prefer shorter episodes that are more like 10 to 15, leave the comment short like Santi. He'll know what it means. I forgot I wrote that. But long story short, yes, good writers absolutely plan out the story and its twists. But actually, bad ones do too. Plotter-written works benefit from having focus. They know the story they are telling. They write with the end goal.
Not is about screenplay, right?
The process can become more methodical than passionate, which can then lead to stale scripts with characters that aren't fleshed out and plot points that just happen in ways that don't feel natural. Take Hallmark movies, for example. We all love a good holiday movie, but go onto TikTok
TikTok, and you can see dozens of videos with people making fun of the predictable storylines that happen in every single one. Those movies are so planned that they're practically checking story beats off a list, which might be fine as a cheesy movie to pass the time on a slow Christmas evening, but it doesn't exactly invoke those feelings of intrigue and excitement that we want out of stories like FNAF. It also gets way harder to be a plotter when you're dealing with a franchise that goes beyond just the first couple of entries. That doesn't mean it can't happen, it's just rare. The voice director of Has Been Hotel and Hell of a Boss, Richard Horvitz, said exactly that when asked about those two shows.
Vivian knows exactly where the shows begin and end. She knows exactly where they want to go.
That's pretty rare, right?
It's rare.
Also, if you don't recognize this guy, you might instead know him as Invader Zim, Billy from The Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy,
Wait, what?
or Alpha 9 from the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers.
I know two characters out there, but...
This guy is a veteran in the industry.
Jeez.
So when he says this isn't a common way to write long stories, he means it. Not only is it rare, it's also super risky. TV shows often don't know how many seasons they'll be getting or whether all their actors will stay on board for the full run. So planning every detail and how it's going to pay off can be incredibly challenging.
Bro, just plan everything and then do it.
One of my favorite sitcoms growing up was How I Met Your Mother. It's not aged particularly well, but actually the thing that tarnished its reputation more than Barney's treatment of women was its ending. The show's creators had planned out how the show would end all the way back in season 1. They even pre-recorded the kids so that they could keep the show's framing device for the final episode. However, the ending didn't end up sitting right with people because after 9 seasons, the characters were different people. They'd grown and evolved. Their relationship dynamics had changed. So in order to make the ending fit, the creators had to basically undo 5 to 7 seasons worth of character development to shove them into a hole that they no longer fit in.
What?
This is why writers for longer
Oh my
run
God, that's so
franchises for
bad.
TV books
That's so bad, I
video
don't
games
know.
tend not to be plotters. Instead, they are what are called pantsers. While plotters plan everything out before they write it, pantsers write by the seat of their pants, just writing and seeing where the story takes them. Now, doesn't that sound familiar? And it's way more common in professional writing than you'd think. Margaret Atwood and Stephen King are famous for writing this way.
Yeah, I
King
kind of write that way
in
too.
his memoir when he
It's
says
weird.
outlines are the last resource for bad fiction writers who wish to God they were writing master's theses. Perhaps a little harsh, but it just shows
I don't know
how these
how I
pantser
write
stories
anymore,
can
I
be
guess.
incredibly successful and creative. However, the word pantser gives me the ick. In England, a pantser sounds like someone who's going to be tried for indecent exposure. So instead, I'm going to use a term used by another novelist and notorious non-plotter, George R.R. Martin. He calls plotters architects because they follow blueprints and outlines, and he refers to pantsers as gardeners, which not only gives these writers more dignity, it also gives this style of writing a much clearer and less chaotic
Okay, I
definition.
guess.
Now, the gardener knows certain things. He's not completely ignorant. He knows whether he planted an oak tree or an ear of corn or a cauliflower. He has some idea of the shape, but a lot of it depends on the wind and the weather and how much blood he gives it and so forth.
Rather than completely winging it,
Wait, you
it's
give
about
blood
letting
to
a story
plants?
blossom and cultivating it as it grows. It's not that gardeners lacked structure completely, it's that these types of writers let the process evolve the final product, while architects already know what they want the final product to look like. Gardeners like Martin seed their stories with a myriad of ideas that they believe may lead somewhere interesting. At the end of it,
Oh, bro,
you'll have
I'm
a
just so
garden
confused.
full
I don't know
of
which
beautiful
type of
surprises.
writer I am. I'm
This
just me,
is
I
what
guess.
Scott was talking about with his idea of ropes. He would start an idea and he knew it would end in something. He just didn't know what it was at the time because he hadn't pulled enough. He hadn't let the plant grow fully. I understand that this can look like complete chaos to those who don't operate in this way. Believe me, I love structure in everything I do. I am an architect through and through, but
Slay,
I can see
I guess.
why it would be hugely rewarding for those writing the story, because there aren't predetermined outcomes. Gardeners are able to write about whatever excites them personally. This ultimately leads to passionate character-driven plots where heroes are written into fatal corners and where unexpected side characters become scene stealers. We get beautiful, rich worlds filled with detail and complex rules and systems by which they operate.
So many horses, did you
These
see
are the
that?
things you need to capture the imagination of an audience and
I
keep
freak
them
out.
back for more. Of course, there
Oh
will
my God.
always
Oh
be
my God, that's so
exceptions. There will
dumb.
be
Like-
architects that write TV shows that plan plan every detail.
Good
and
Beer
nail
Guy
the land,
2007.
which
What is that
Pop
book?
is going for with has been hotel. And there will be gardeners that don't plan a single movie, and it will still work out. The truth is, this distinction between architects and gardeners isn't binary. It's a spectrum. Writers will have their own unique combination of order and chaos and don't fall completely into one camp. J.R.R. Tolkien is a prime example of someone that managed to do both. Tolkien famously took what was supposed to be a short, simple Hobbit sequel and gardened it into a Lord of the Rings novel so massive that his publisher had to split it into 3 books. He had a plan, but was able to build the world around that plan like a gardener.
Oh, I know. Somebody ain't talking about Lord of the Rings without me.
No, I've just finished. I'll get out of your hair. Bye. The point is, neither way is technically right.
You know, Lord of the Rings is cool.
Each person is going to handle their own stories differently.
Yes.
And it may change their tactic as time goes on.
I think in my mind, the story was going to be 3 games. And in all honesty, I think Five Nights at Freddy's 3 was where I kind of started letting myself be driven a little bit more.
Before proceeding, I have to go to the bathroom and we'll do cookie time, okay? I'll be back, don't you worry. Proceed with the FNAF theories. We're almost done.
After the first game, Scott took the architect approach, planning the original trilogy to be the complete story. But as time's gone on, he's become more and more of a gardener. And at the end of the day, it's that strategy that has kept us all coming back to FNAF over the last 11 years. This
Bro, I was just get confused, bro.
World full of ghost kids, AI possession, and
ghost kids, AI possession, bro.
That continue to drive the story forward. At least we think so. It's kind of hard to tell sometimes. So, was Scott wrong for not fully planning out the box? Absolutely not.
Why?
But what's not okay is that he has given up on ever figuring it out. What? You didn't really think I'd let Scott get off scot-free, did you? What he's done is extremely common across all forms of media. It's just not the method I would necessarily choose to use, and that's okay. However, by Scott's own admission, he's basically written himself into a corner with the box, and he doesn't know if he can find the motivation to solve the hanging plot thread.
I don't know if I can find it again.
The reason this is so egregious is because it breaks one of the most fundamental
just destroy it then.
of storytelling.
I guess I don't know how to do that.
If you're unfamiliar with this term, it comes from the Russian playwright Anton Chekhov, who famously wrote about the importance of narrative payoff, saying, "One must never place a loaded rifle on the stage if it isn't going to go off. It's wrong to make promises you don't mean to keep." By drawing attention to any story element, be it the lore of the clock tower in Back to the Future, the complication of Iron Man's suit freezing in the first movie, or the box in FNAF 4, a writer is making an implicit promise that these elements will pay off in some way. Chekhov's gun, by its very nature, is an architect's tool. You're putting something in the audience's faces early on, knowing that it's going to come through later because you've already figured out where it's going. Instead, Scott fell into the classic gardener trap, believing an idea, a seed, was going
so
to
cute
become
to
something
have.
big, and so forced our attention onto it without having the final something planned out, which leads to this. Oh, what's this? It's my own Chekhov's gun. This here is J.J. Abrams' Mystery Box. Nearly 20 years ago, writer and director J.J. Abrams presented the idea that storytellers should be planting mysteries for the audience, but without strictly knowing what's inside. Chekhov's gun without the planning. The concept came from this box of magic that Abrams' grandfather bought him. Supposedly, it contained $50 worth of assorted tricks, but it only cost $15. However, Abrams never opened the box. If he did open the box, he'd know what was in it and the joy and wonder would dissipate. But closed, it had infinite potential. To him, the mystery, the withholding of information, was worth more than what was inside. He demonstrated this idea with his show Lost, which continually introduced mystery on top of mystery on top of mystery. On the odd occasion, they'd actually resolve something, but the show really thrived on asking questions, not answering them. That's not to say that Abrams didn't want to pay off his mysteries down the road, just that his method put the clues before the climax, and often they were pointing to a climax that wasn't fully fleshed out. He was essentially trying to apply the principles of
You just should release something if you already have an idea what it is and it's fully done.
It allowed long-running series to put cool ideas out there and get tons of engagement without having to spend all the time planning, especially in fields like TV
if it's
shows
already
and
everything
video
done,
games
it's
where you
better.
didn't know when things would end. But the problem was, they did all end eventually. So the gardeners had to start forcing wild branching plots together in order to make a resolution. And most of them struggled to stick the landing. Lost infamously had a divisive final few seasons. The answers either became so convoluted because they're trying to tie together all these loose mystery boxes that didn't really fit together, or the answers were just straight up
I guess
bad
if you just don't do it for the money, you just have your idea and finish it, because then it's just a mess.
Is often credited as the primary reason those movies missed the mark. This is exactly what Scott was saying in his interview. FNAF is a series full of mystery upon mystery, with very little confirmation or tying up of loose ends. And now we have a mystery box that we're basically being told isn't really important to the story despite its prominence. But what's even worse is Scott telling us that not only wasn't it important, his gun won't even go off. That's the real issue at play. Our time has been squandered. Humans are hardwired to want closure. Heck, it's one of the reasons we theorize in the first place. When an element you introduced doesn't come back, it's not only a waste of narrative resources, it frustrates us because we now lack that closure. I don't think fans would have been as upset if he had just admitted that while he was struggling to nail down the answer, he was still planning on returning to it in the future. Because for a story to be seen as satisfying to the audience who have been in love with it for so long, now that you have presented it, the gun does eventually have to go off. So, Scott, if you're watching, no, you weren't wrong to not have fully planned out the box. But that doesn't mean you stop trying to find the end of that rope. You're gonna need to find your old architect groove, at least partially, to help put this mystery box to rest once and for all. I'm not saying you need to solve it immediately and cause all of it to fall apart like we saw with Lost, far from it. Let's face it, you're like Hugh Jackman's Wolverine. You're gonna be wheeled out to do FNAF stories until you're 90. So, you have time to find what's in your Chekhov's box. I'll even give you a hint. In that TED Talk, J.J. Abrams did say that often when we look at stories and mystery boxes by extension, there's this idea of what we think we're getting and what we're really getting. He goes on to list some of his favorite movies like E.T., but explains that it isn't a classic because it's about an alien and a kid, but because it's about a child dealing with his family's divorce. The theme is what's inside the box. So take some time, search your story for the themes, and fill your box with those. That way, even if the physical contents of the box don't quite live up to the expectations the fans have, it will still resonate and show that despite the difficulty, despite the challenges, despite your Gardner writing style, you do care about the story as much as we do. And right now, I'm going to be jumping on a live stream with a bunch of people who absolutely care about this kind of thing and have turned those frustrations into building blocks for their own indie horror franchises. We've got Unique Geese, Super Horror Bro, Rocket Music, Horoscoped, and JT Music all here to talk about how games like FNAF inspired their games, lessons they've learned, and answering a few questions from you guys. So here's the link to that live stream. Hop on over and say hi, and as always, theorists, remember, it's all just a theory. A game theory!
Last video, finally, Jesus Christ.
The FNAF game timeline by breaking one of the fandom's most foundational theories. Man,
last video, everyone.
He is just a troll, isn't he? Hello, Internet! Welcome to Game Theory, the show whose fate is to be spring-locked inside this franchise.
Bro, we are already so much time watching this. Is so crazy. Finally,
spring-locked inside Toy
we're
Chica
finally
in the
gonna
movie. Now, that statement might be confusing
get
for
out of this.
FNAF fans who, for some reason, haven't seen the second movie yet. The toy animatronics aren't spring-locked; they use Endo 02s, and up until now, you'd be right. That was our thinking. But then this movie came out, and we see the quote ribs of the Endo 02 acting just like the spring locks in Afton's spring Bonnie suit. That's
what is this
only big
movie?
reveal
What?
either. The movie also seems to tell us
This
that there's
so
only
weird.
one spirit in FNAF 2, the puppets. The toys and the withered kids aren't possessed, Charlie, or Charlotte as the movie continuously calls out, is the one controlling them, and she is the only ghost in the location. So yeah, while the first movie was a pretty paint-by-numbers reimagining of the first game with some fun Easter eggs, for this second movie, Scott decided to alter his approach and gave us a movie that fundamentally changes our view of the franchise by clarifying some of the most confusing parts. And there is a lot to dive into, even with the ones I've already mentioned, so make sure you're subscribed because I will definitely be going over those in the future. However, today I wanted to focus on one detail in particular, one change that left my jaw absolutely agape in the theater when I saw it: the introduction of one of this franchise's most important characters, Michael Afton. For the longest time, we've believed that Michael Afton has been the person that we've been playing as in all of the original 6 games, going location to location, following the trail of destruction his father William left in his wake, and trying to cleanse the world of the pain he caused. He starts in Sister Location, where he gets scooped, turned into a walking corpse, then heading on to future locations under a bunch of fake names like Mike Schmidt. He goes through FNAF 2, FNAF 1, FNAF 3, and eventually FNAF 6, where his father, as well as all the other spirits, get cornered by Henry, and they all perish in a fire together. But then the FNAF 2 movie released.
Maybe that's because they see they're still alive or something.
The regular old security guard from the first movie and the first game's paycheck, we were also introduced to a new character, the brother of Afton's daughter, Vanessa, Michael Afton. So Mike Schmidt wasn't a pseudonym. These two are officially being shown as separate characters. That is a massive change, something that totally upends what we've believed about the timeline I've mentioned. But after I came down from the shock, I took a step back and gave it a real long think. You see, something Matt and I would always do at the end of every year was reevaluate our understanding of FNAF. Wipe the slate clean and start from zero. Doing that, having that separation
of our lore
2026 details like the company changing from Inc. to LLC, which opened up a whole new path for theorizing, and that was only possible because we took that time to reset. Last year, I took a look at the knock-on effects that would happen if the books were canon. That one turned out to not be true after Secret of the Mimic released, but the point remains. So, as
then why did they make the
year,
books?
I wanted to give that a go once again, to take a step back and reassess my understanding. While I and many others have been convinced that Michael and Mike are one in the same, could it be possible that they are in fact different? And if they are, would that fix things? The answer, dear theorists, is a resounding yes. It clarifies a bunch of motivations, it gives us a much cleaner order of events, and it might even help confirm a theory that's existed in the fanbase for a long time.
I never watched FNAF movies.
I let you borrow it for a bit, but I'm stealing FNAF back now because I gotta get to the bottom of this timeline.
That's so cute.
Let me start by clarifying something myself. Can we use the movie to solve the games at all? It's a fair thing to ask. Much like the books, these movies seem to be alternate universe reimaginings of the game's stories. We are seeing the events of FNAF 1 and 2, but key details are different. Vanessa, for example, isn't in the first few games. She's from Security Breach, and yet here she is in the first 2 movies. In this new movie, we see Charlotte dying at a Freddy's that the toy animatronics were at in 1982, but the game's version of Freddy's doesn't open until 1983. And at the end of the second movie, we also see a teaser for the third movie, where people find Springtrap to make their horror-themed attraction, which is the same as FNAF 3, but this time it's like a year into the future, rather than the 30 years into the future that the games do. They are
that's confusing.
Stories. So how can we take them seriously from a lore perspective? Well, the answer lies in what I just said a few moments ago. The movies are like the books. And even though the books aren't canon, meaning they're not one for one the same story, that doesn't mean we can't use smaller parts and interpret them
if they're not canon, why do them?
Or to clarify parts of the series that the fan base has gone off course with. Scott does seem to be in his clarification era, from Secret of the Mimic to smaller Easter eggs in 5 Laps at Freddy's. It feels like he's trying to help point us in the right direction after years of theorizing. And heck, without stories like The Mimic or GGY, there's a bunch we wouldn't know about those two characters, even if they aren't in exactly the same universe. This movie isn't Scott telling us how FNAF 2 happened, he's giving us details that either fill in the gaps, like the spring locks and the Endo 02s, or he might be showing us where our theories went awry in order that we can be put on the right track again. So long as information doesn't directly contradict game facts,
how many animatronics are in the movies?
Then it's fair game for interpretation. And I do believe believe that this Michael thing falls into that category. Let's go back in time a bit and look at this theory of Mike being Michael and where it came from in order that we can see whether this change feels reasonable and what the knock-on effects are. Matt first brought up this idea back in the episode FNAF The Final Theory Part 2. That was 8 years ago and definitely wasn't the final theory, was it, Matt?
You lied to me.
Anyway, for this theory, there were 3 major pieces of evidence. Firstly, even though he
I guess this will never end. It's just
It's me, Mike.
This is just a mess.
On hand units. He also used Mike in the security logbook, and when Afton perishes in Ultimate Custom Night, he also called him by this nickname. The second piece is that we play as a character called Mike Schmidt, who was fired for tampering with the animatronics and his odor. Now, not only therefore is he using the same first name, but when you're a literal walking corpse, yeah, you're probably gonna smell a bit. Fritz Smith was also fired for the same thing, leading us to believe that Michael was going location to location under fake names in order to fix everything. Which ties into evidence point number 3, where at the end of Sister Location, Michael tells his father,
I'm going to come find you.
This was his main motivation. Michael was going after his father after learning the truth about what he did with the express purpose of revenge. It felt like a really solid theory and was really narratively satisfying. It explains why the security guards would work these awful, awful jobs and continue coming back night after night. It wasn't about the job, it was about the mission. There was just one tiny problem with this though, the dates. Sister Location's place in the timeline has always been vague at best, but as we pointed out in our ultimate timeline, if Michael getting scooped in the Sister Location bunker is the start of his redemptive arc, then it has to be before 1987 when FNAF 2 takes place in order for him to get fired as Fritz, which also means Michael would then go to the FNAF 1 location where the animatronics are all intact before William returns to the facility, breaks and melts them down to harvest the souls trapped inside, creating Remnant, which he then used to create the Fun Times. Do you see the problem here? We're pretty sure that the Fun Times have souls in them. Even with this reevaluation of evidence, it still feels pretty likely. We saw that the original animatronics were melted down to create Remnant in the 4th closet, which was then injected into the Fun Times to bring them to life.
The books not more accurate
about 5 things becoming one. The 5 children's souls being smushed together into one thing, which once Michael is scooped, they escape using his body as Ennard and then go on to become Molten Freddy, with the 5 souls being inside one body. We even saw these spirits arguing with Elizabeth in the source code of Scott's website, revealing to us that transformation from Ennard to Molten Freddy. And more recently, people discovered that the furnace during the Ennard repair level of Help Wanted contains a bunch of Endo 01s, the same endos used for the classic animatronics. These being melted in Ennard's level, the character who is the culmination of these souls, it seems like they might be connected. So after breaking these animatronics apart, creating the Fun Times, and then getting spring locked in a back room would all have had to happen before Michael goes down to Sister Location and gets scooped, which means Michael can't be the night guard in each location. Basically, even though we liked it, Michael being Mike was far from a clean theory. It had some good evidence for and against it, but it felt like the most narratively satisfying answer, and without much to tell us otherwise, that's what we and a lot of the fanbase stuck with. I mean, come on, who would use the same name multiple times? That would just make everything super confusing. Until you remember that this is the series that has so many Jeremys, it's hard to keep track.
Whenever you're doing these stories for this long, eventually you just run out of names.
And that reality has now come to a head because
just go to a random name generator on the internet, I guess.
Mike Schmidt is a guy trying to provide for his family and so takes these crappy jobs because he needs the paycheck, only to discover that he has a strange connection with the place, that William Afton kidnapped and killed his brother. Michael Afton, on the other hand, is a creep. I mean, just look at that face. Great casting, don't get me wrong, but it doesn't make me like the guy. He states in the movie that he's carrying on his father's work. He's using the animatronics to kill people, luring them to the FNAF 2 location. He's meant to be our Act 3 antagonist, although whether that actually happened is kind of debatable. But regardless of how it was implemented, implemented it was, and so So here we are. The movies weren't the only time this came up either. Recently, Scott released Ticket to Fun, a collection of FNAF memorabilia, including Jeremy's paycheck, a security badge, and a blacklight. By using said blacklight on the included crossword, you find the phrase, "Name Mike Schmidt." Given that outside of the movie, Scott has never brought this name back up since the first game, it feels like once again he's drawing our attention to this name, to have us rethink how it fits. We were also recently introduced to another new night guard, Ralph, in the week before. This is the night guard who records the FNAF 1 phone calls. But despite everything leading up to this point, he loved Freddy's and was there because he wanted to provide for his daughter. As the nights go on, he gains a morbid curiosity about what's happening, and so continues to show up each night. Clearly, people in this universe are just willing to work a bad job. It doesn't have to be because of some eternal vendetta. And all of this actually solves the issue I've been raising. With Michael being his own character, he now doesn't have to be present.
Okay, is Michael good or mean?
1 to 3. He can just be the protagonist of FNAF 4 to 6. FNAF 1 to 3 instead can be the story of Mike Schmidt. His name is on the FNAF 1
Makes sense if the 3 was gonna finish the series. The games are divided by characters.
For the same reasons as Mike. So I'm willing to believe that these two could still be the same person, with Mike using a fake name. I mean, in the FNAF 1 movie, we saw how much Mike was struggling for work, so maybe the pseudonym is so he can get work in the first place. Plus, we did see Mike in the FNAF 2 movie only completing a single night when all the animatronics were active, just like Fritz. And then it all culminates in FNAF 3, like we're going to see in the movies, with Mike Schmidt now knowing what's going on and trying to end it all with fire. Although ultimately it fails because while he's learned all about Afton's crimes, he doesn't have a full understanding of everything like Remnant. I could see that being what they do if they want to make more movies, but I'll leave that kind of theorizing to Lee. This is where Michael can come in. We've suspected for a while that in FNAF 4, we're playing as Michael, not as the crying child David. Because while we see the hospital details tying us back to
mouse in the bear? Oh my god, you see the mouse cursor in the plushie? So random.
As a security guard would have. And then in Ditophobia, we learn that it's a hallucinogenic gas used in a place that is weirdly similar to the FNAF 4 house. And in that story, it's a 17-year-old who hallucinates to be 7. At the end of the story, we also hear the voice of a middle-aged man on the tapes convincing
him it's so confusing. I can't just... I don't understand this.
Most of the community has attributed this voice to William Afton, which makes a lot of sense given what we know about FNAF 4, which then means we could connect this story to the Michael Afton we met in the movie. One who is helping his father, but maybe not fully of his own volition. He's being haunted by nightmares of animatronics, and he knows that disobeying his father will only lead to it continuing. He would then go down into the bunker following his father's orders.
I found it. It was right where you said it would be, just like you asked me to.
Which leads him to finding Baby, discovering the truth about what his father did, and...
Oh my god, that scared me.
That
was really scary because it was a jump scare, I guess. Maybe not for you, but the sound was scary.
Remnants and infuse them into the fun times, fixing that core timeline issue. It could even be that all of this happens after FNAF 3. Michael's big ending monologue from Sister Location where he says, "I'm going to come find you," shows an already burnt down Fazbear's Fright, meaning that event may have already happened. Personally, I quite like that idea, because it means after a few weeks when Michael's body decomposes, Ennard leaves, forming their new bodies as Scrap Baby and Molten Freddy, and are almost immediately drawn to the FNAF 6 location, which takes place that same year, rather than these rogue animatronics and a literal rotting corpse wandering around for several decades. I mean, Michael may be unable to die, but his corpse ain't getting any fresher. After decades, I'm not even sure how much would be left of him. But I hear you saying, how would Michael hear the FNAF 1 phone call if he's not the one working at the FNAF 1 location anymore? Well, just because he isn't the character we play as in FNAF 1 doesn't mean he isn't working there at some point. In the FNAF 2 movie, Michael is working at the original location, allowing YouTubers to come in and film the place only to perish. He also talks about trying to help his father's mission, so it's not unreasonable to assume that at some point in the games, Michael could have been there doing the same thing, listening to the same pre-recorded messages after Mike Schmidt had moved on. So, does it make more logical sense? Definitely.
No.
Does it make things more
this doesn't
confusing.
make any
Also,
sense at all.
definitely.
This
Does it make
game
things
series
more
doesn't make any sense.
Definitely.
Because it's all a mess.
Technically,
Thank
Michael
you.
would have the same motivations.
I'm
as he
sorry,
always
I can't
did. He
understand
ends up
this
being a pawn in
anymore.
his dad's schemes, but after finding out the truth, he vows to make things right and immediately finds a job for a Freddy's that shouldn't exist,
Ooh.
knowing his dad will be drawn there, and then helps Henry end it all. The challenge is that it feels like a speed run. He goes straight from being tortured by his dad to finding out the secret to ending it all. Our previous timelines meant he had build-up, time to methodically work against William and figure out how exactly to help the children's souls. But this way, while logical, would mean it all happens within the space of a single year, and his revenge slash
that's
redemption
quite
is very
fast.
quickly paid off. Although, looking at the pace of the movies, maybe that's what Scott's going for. And speaking of the movies, Mike Schmidt being a separate character works there and feels satisfying because we get to know him. We know what drives him, but in the games, we know nothing about him. All of what I suggested is essentially just inference from the movies, and that doesn't feel great because we want to feel like this character and their journey.
Wait, why is the jacket and the other part of
less for
jacket
the
different
character
colors
more
and
so for
patterns?
us. The eras of
I
FNAF
guess
up
it's
until now
style.
have been essentially broken down like this: Secret of the Mimic, or the Edwin era, FNAF 1 to 7, the Afton era, and Help Wanted onwards, the Mimic era. This, what we've been talking about, puts a divide in the middle of the Afton era as we currently know it. But I think that actually
Where's
makes
the
things
Airy
clearer.
era,
Even
by
though
the
much
way?
in it may not be important to the actual plot, what is important is what we learn in those games. We learn about the missing children's incident, we learn about Charlie being killed outside, and we learn about William Afton being spring-locked in the back room. The first 3 games, which were initially the only game Scott was going to make, were teaching us about William's crimes. This was the William era of the story. It wasn't for us to know Mike or care about his story. It was to get us invested in this villain and what he did. And by making us nothing more than a name, no face, no voice lines, it allowed us to sit in that chair, in that office, and witness it all firsthand. To become part of the ghost story. We became Mike Schmidt, a random guy who stumbled upon this place and this game and sat through 5 nights despite it scaring the heck out of us. Then, when the sequels happened, we went back because we felt the intrigue to learn more. And it felt good when we finally beat Springtrap because it felt like we'd ended this horrible man's reign of terror. We did that. But that novelty admittedly only lasts for so long, which allowed the story to be followed by the Michael era, where the story shifts from being a spooky first-person mystery into a character-driven one. We go beyond William's crimes and into William the man, William the father. We learn about his 3 kids, David in FNAF 4, Elizabeth in Sister Location, and throughout it all, we see what it was like to be a child of William through the eyes of Michael. This makes you hate the man even more because not only was he a monster who committed awful crimes, he was a monster towards his own children.
Poor kids, bro.
Nothing more than tools in his experiments, which leads us to cheering on Michael as he finally wins against his
Bro,
old
was
man,
Michael
where
good
we
or
then get
bad
to
now?
see
I
him
don't
tortured for
understand.
all eternity. We want so desperately for this story to be this big overarching idea, with every character being important to the plot. We're very guilty of that on this channel, to say the least, because it's what feels most satisfying. But actually, we might be being shown that sometimes a character is just a character, a means to an end, a way to take us, the audience, on a journey so that we can learn about the things that matter for that moment.
Sometimes a story is just a story.
It also means that characters
Yeah,
can
true.
stop
Sometimes
being
a story is just a
important.
story.
Right now, the story is no longer really about William or Henry, it's about Edwin and the Mimic. We can't be afraid of letting go of characters or letting new ones come in, even if it's just for a short while. I guess sometimes you just need a Jeremy or a Mike to do something to help things progress. But hey, that's just a theory. A game theory! Thanks for watching.
World premiere on Game Theory.
Who caused the bite of 83?
Bro, guys, finally we finished Game Theory, these playlists. Jesus Christ. Hello, Shield Gamer. That's so cute, you're adorable. We finally finished! We finally finished it. Let me see what the comments say. Almost confusing cell. Bro, Jesus Christ, look at this comment. Okay, thank you. Bro, yeah, there's some contradictory stuff, Yeah, now it's time to watch the rest of the videos, true. Yeah, but, I understand this is such a mess. This is such a mess, bro. Jesus Christ. Let me just... Okay. Done. Now the next one is... let's see.